So I wanted to give an update on this podcast poll. So pretty much in both rounds of the poll, I did the first round with all the choices, then I did a second round with more limited choices to kind of narrow it down. And No Country for Straight Men won out both times. But then you wouldn't believe it. But at the last minute, this van pulled up in front of my house, and it had like 10,000 votes to keep the old name of the podcast. I don't know how.
What?
But, don't question it. It's fine. I guess.
Are you saying that we had an F slur curve?
I guess we're just going to have to keep their old podcast name because these votes are totally legit. And I didn't buy a bot to put them through the poll or anything like that.
Can we see the result of the poll?
No. Why would you want to see that? What are you, a bigot?
Yeah, whoa.
What are you, conspiracy? You're a conspiracy theorist?
Okay.
It's fine. Everything's great. The courts have said it can't be challenged. So everyone shut up. Podcast is staying 3 homos at a pussy. What's up, all? We are back after a bit of a break, and we are talking about probably the least controversial subject ever. I don't think really affects any of our lives at all. I don't know.
To be fair, it's probably the least controversial subject we've covered on this podcast.
That's fair.
Okay, yes. Yeah. Least controversial, the most
bonerific topic?
The most bonerific, maybe. But yes, we are talking about porn, and we're revisiting an old friend as we do so. Yeah, this was discovered by Danimal, because Danimal is a big fan of this YouTube channel, I guess.
Yeah.
My
hubby might like them and watches some of their videos.
Ah. Is he trying to push you into things you don't like?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Maybe
no. Maybe. No. Wait.
He's
no.
The sissy porn didn't get you suspicious.
Well, hey now. I like Daddy.
But yeah, you want to lay it on us? What's going on with this video?
Well, what's going on with this video is that Billie Eilish said some things on Howard Stern about porn and how porn kind of, did things to her because she watched it way too young and she had an unrealistic view about sex and she feels like it really damaged her. But it's not porn's fault, apparently.
Good.
It's everything else in the world.
Is it the patriarchy's fault? Is patriarchy?
I did maybe. That's another video. Maybe.
I mean, I like the patriarchy personally.
But we get to hear exactly what Billie Eilish says on Howard Stern. He doesn't cherry pick it, so that's kind of nice.
That is.
But we get to hear his interjections, which are, we'll see.
All right, fair enough. So I guess we can do quick hellos from everybody.
He stepped away.
Oh, Oh, that's right. He did. Gabbles.
Look.
It's you. It's you now. You have to hold this together.
Oh. Hello, I'm Lord Tennyson's pipe. Hello,
and what is your favorite porn?
Front page. I don't know.
You like front page?
Quickest one. Just to get it out of my system.
Fastest click is your go-to.
Yeah. Why make it difficult?
Danimal.
Yes.
Share your most intimate moments.
No, I would never. I feel like I view porn the average amount of any adult man.
6 times
86 hours a week. It's, it's normal, right?
Normal.
Sometimes I call in sick to work for, 4 days.
That sounds right. Sounds right.
Yeah, forget to eat.
A man has his needs. What are you going to say?
Yeah. I mean, I've lost all of my friends in contact with my family. And let's see, my husband left and I haven't seen him in 2 years. But yeah, porn has really kept me company. I feel like I watch the average amount.
It's enriched your life.
Yeah. What day is it? Is it 2000?
Well, who's the president?
17 still? Barack Obama, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's still Barack Obama forever, in our hearts at least. At least. Yeah, so I'm khavvah as usual. My experience with porn is basically zero. Functionally zero, I guess I'd say. Never really watched it.
Not even gay porn? Lots of straight women like gay porn.
I read, ironically, fan fiction really horrible fan fiction, and I always read it with the intent of like mocking it. But even then, after a while, I just didn't like how it made me feel, so I stopped reading it. It's just gross. So I'm probably going to be the Bible thumping bigot here.
Tisk tisk.
Yeah, I don't really like looking at simulated sex or real sex, I guess is what most porn is. I don't really
like to peep in people's windows and watch it live.
I don't really like reading about it either. It's just too weird for me. I know of things about it just from hearing people talk about it. That's essentially my experience.
There are people out there that are like porn fans. Like they know all the names, they got all the movies, they go to the conventions. Like you ever watch like who's that comedian? Dave Attell? He had a whole show where he would invite comedians over and they would watch like a porn and they would like comment on the porn and riff on it and stuff. Like there are people out there that are way into it.
It's kind of like the worst Marvel fanboy.
Oh God.
Guys, did you see the spin-off? What's her face? Got a cream pie? Yeah. The cream pie spin-off.
Oh, the old Black Widow Hulk gif. I think everybody knows what that is.
All right, Tennyson, you want to quickly say hello and then your experience with porn, I guess. Or experiments, either way.
Well, hello. I'm Tennyson, and yeah, it's not sure how to go about this because I was just in the bathroom and I missed pretty much everyone else's introductions. But
oh, the spicy intro got to you, huh?
Did you let out some energy so you wouldn't get excited during this?
No, I let out some piss so I wouldn't have to do it again for like the next couple of hours during the recording. But
that's good too.
Yeah. But yeah, like many adolescent boys with internet access, it was basically sort of a matter of time. Not to say that it was entirely a good thing, of course. Ultimately, I think it has done long-term harm, although we don't know the full extent because there's just very little research on it. I've had my fair share of experience with this stuff. Wouldn't recommend it. I would not suggest or recommend it.
Oh, and I wanted to clarify because I know someone's going to bring it up. MPreg is not porn. Not porn. It's not a form of porn. I deny this.
Whatever you got to tell yourself to sleep at night, I guess.
It's not sexual. They're just pregnant.
Uh-huh.
They're pregnant.
Well,
and
how do people get pregnant, Cobb?
It's very wholesome. What are pictures of pregnant women pornography?
Well, pictures of women in general, I consider pornography. They should be covered from head to toe.
If a pregnant woman is walking down the street, that's not
Inshallah.
porn. It's not porn. It's just beautiful, and it's art.
No, their hair should be covered. Inshallah.
All right, so I guess we need to get started on this video. See what he has to say.
Let's
go ahead. Whoever wants to be brave enough to click that play button.
Let's do it. Let's.
By the way, what was that second song you did? It's from the new album on Saturday Night Live. I thought that was beautiful. What is that song? And what is that about?
You.
I think it's about porn.
That song. Say, what were you going to say?
I think it's about porn.
There is a verse about porn.
Oh, I've got some opinions about this. Does this make me the bad guy?
Are these Billie Eilish puns?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know anything about her music.
I like her music. It's all very somber and sad, though. Stuff that's
is it?
It's. Yeah. I'm not a fan of. Well, to be honest, I don't listen to a lot of music made like past 1990. But I'm not a fan of William Eilish, just because her music does seem. It seems like peak millennial self-pitying somberness. It's elevator music for teenage girls that feel depressed. That's basically it.
I like sad music, so that's probably why I'm biased.
Mm.
Some of her music is quite pretty. I'll throw one or two songs.
I mean, if she writes all of her music herself, then I mean she's a step up.
The one thing,
no, I think her brother does.
The one criticism I will land at her is all her music kind of gets samey, very much the same sound over and over. So that can be kind of
that tends to happen a lot with solo artists.
Yeah, but some of her songs are quite pretty. So Plus, she was homeschooled, so that's pretty based.
Mm-hmm.
I will give her that. I will give her that.
She had hippie parents who homeschooled her, and she talks about how public schools are all like brainwashing factories. So I'm like, yep, you go, girl.
Pretty much.
Hello, and welcome back to What's the Safeword. My name's Amp, and today we're talking about porn.
Internet is really, really great.
For porn!
Demonetized. Today's video is actually a conversation that was had over on the Howard Stern show. Podcast, radio, Howard, what is your show even anymore? And this conversation happens to revolve around porn, sex work, sex education, and all takes place on Howard Stern's show between Howard, Billie Eilish, and her brother Phineas. And I want to start by saying that
Where's the brother Fab?
Did you hear the little Yoshi noise when he pulled the
Yes.
brother up? It's like, can't you just contain
Yeah,
yourself
he's
for
just-
1 second?
Yeah. Come on, bro. Be a professional.
Come on. You dog mask wearing porn star?
You asexual. Keep it together.
Yeah, I guess he's on the. That's right. In the next video, he says he's on the porn star with an OnlyFans that
I'm
is an open
demisexual.
relationship. Is apparently on the
won't stop
asexual
me
spectrum
from-
now.
Trying to lick random boys.
Well, he's in an open relationship. Don't knock him.
Oh, he is?
I guess I don't know.
Allegedly.
So for those of the audience who might be unaware, for those of the audience who are like, I don't know, Zoomers, Howard Stern is actually not sure how many
You see,
of you young
Ask
kids
your grandfather what a radio was, and on
Yeah.
the radio, voices used to come out of them, and one of those voices was Howard Stern.
Howard Stern
1,000 years ago.
He used to
This-
say
the-
naughty words and make
used to
sex
say
jokes.
he used to interview very racy and raunchy guests. He used to interview members of the Klan,
I
prostitutes.
can only assume he has an amazing soundboard.
Oh yeah, of course.
I mean, yeah,
he does.
Howard Stern's soundboard is probably the holy grail of broadcasting.
Howard Stern didn't keep up the bad boy image, though. I thought he went a little like woke-ish, maybe.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's just kind of there.
I think he kind of
exists.
got normal over time. He lost a bit of his edge when, I don't know, I feel like when Obama got in office, it really screwed up a lot of these edgelords.
Well, I thought he put
I
a lot
couldn't-
of money into Xfinity or not Xfinity, the Sirius
Oh,
radio,
yeah.
and I
Is that
think
the-
that ended up kind of bombing.
Is that the satellite radio thing?
That's the satellite
Yeah.
radio.
Holy shit, showing my age.
I know.
I remember he was on Letterman, advertising it.
That was on a thing called a television.
Ooh.
Ask your
Oh.
grandparents.
In my day, you used to have TVs that were tiny, or you used to have them in big flat versions that really didn't have much of a purpose aside from being digital. Those days, you had to sit in front of the TV. It didn't follow you around like with your little phone, you kids, and your Bluetooth headsets, speakers.
Yeah,
So-
and your hula
You're not
hoops.
old enough.
Yeah.
You're not old enough to be making these jokes, Tenny.
Look,
Hey,
Ken-
I remember playing
Kenny
on
uses
on-
a typewriter. He can be as much of a crank as he wants.
Yeah, all right, fine.
He's earned it.
I remember playing 3D Pinball Space Cadet on a Windows 98 computer when I was 6.
I absolutely adore Billie. This is not a hit piece. This is a conversational piece around something Billie said and a topic that they went very deeply into about sex, porn, and how it affects our society. Now, Billie,
They didn't go
I
that
love
deeply
you,
into it. They
and I
talked for
think
like
you're
5 minutes about it.
lovely. But I think your ocean eyes might have caused your vision to get a little blurry because I know what you're trying to say in this interview, and we're going to talk about it piece by piece. But I think that while what's said holds true, while your experience around trauma is absolutely valid, I think the perspective in which this conversation goes and the way it's not checked, it gets very problematic very quickly. Because
I loved that whole. You gotta
Just say you
check
don't
it.
like what she said. Just say it.
Your perspective is valid. How many woke speak things can you squeeze in one sentence? Your
I
perspective
feel like
is
that
valid,
was just
but the way it was framed.
I'm trying to figure out if that was just a long line of Billie Eilish puns because I'm not sure. I don't know any of
No,
her
no.
songs.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
thinking
No,
that
no.
as well.
That particular line was not Billy puns. It was purely woke speak, just to say, I know what she said was true for her, but I still didn't like it.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't
it's
like.
all that,
I don't
like-
like what it implicates about my lifestyle. Boom.
It's that like little thing that they do where they say, look, your opinion is totally valid in yours, but it's very problematic and hurtful. And if you don't jive with our opinion, then you're going to be a toxic person. You might end up being a bad person.
It's a way of saying you need to shut up.
Exactly. That's just a roundabout way of saying, I don't like what you said. You need to shut up about it because you're wrong. Because I think you're wrong.
But wouldn't he be above Billie Eilish in like the hierarchy? Because she's a
white,
straight
white man.
That's true. But he's gay, though.
He's gay.
Yeah.
No, he's demisexual. Excuse me.
Oh.
Asexual on the asexual spectrum. I don't even think that's gay.
Homo. Is he still like homo something? Homo
Sapien?
Romantic? Or whatever whatever the kids call it now. Instead of
an androphile.
An androphile. There you go. That's they gotta invent new words for gay.
I've seen him on a sexual spectrum. Asexual spectrum.
The asexual spectrum, yeah. Which means they like anyone who looks like a man, basically. Anyone who presents as a man.
Even B. Arthur.
Yep.
I'd rather be watching B. Arthur right now.
Cause, but I do think that this conversation provides a good jumping off point of talking about what porn is, how it affects our society, and the fact that porn has revolutionized a lot of what we've done. So without it, we'd be kind of forked, ironically.
The sexual revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race.
Pump your brakes there, Teddy. Save it.
We'll get there. Rah, rah, rah.
And the reason I want to specifically talk about this is because it was trending on my timeline. It was all over Twitter about how Billie Eilish was a SWERF, or a sex worker exclusionary radical feminist. And I really don't think that's the case. But I do think that the message that was sent was not great. So again,
that's another thing. When did like porn become a sex worker?
From what I understand, the phrase sex worker just refers to prostitutes, but in a more politically correct way.
Yeah, that's what I always thought it was.
It's a new term.
It's not as if
take the stigma out.
Yeah.
And it's not as if the word prostitute was inherently negative. It was just a description of one who engages in prostitution.
I think it's pretty negative. Come on now.
I think it carries a negative.
Hooker is worse, but I mean, like, nobody wants to be called a prostitute.
I'm not sure sex worker has much of a more positive or neutral, but who knows?
I mean,
it's definitely an attempt to destigmatize, because that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Disclaimer. This is not a hit piece. This is not me saying I dislike Billie Eilish, but more so I dislike the stance it was made. And I want to talk about and really unpack what she's saying from the generation that she's viewing it from, especially with someone who is in that eye of the public and who is critiqued, quite honestly, about her body all the time. She's made many stances and many commercials and videos that kind of talked about how she wants control over her body and her image. And I stan her so much. Either way, I disagree with her, so I'm sitting. Literally. Let's get into the show. So to first contextualize this conversation, I want to start with sex work is the oldest profession around. It is the oldest form of work, and it is work because it's right there in the title, y'all. It's right there because it's especially.
See, when we give it a name, and then you can just point at the name to prove your point.
Antifa is literally anti-fascism.
Yeah.
It's in the name.
It's in the name.
Although I've never heard of someone saying that sex work isn't work at all. I mean, it is
some kind of labor.
It is a profession. It's just not a very. It's a very salacious one.
Yeah, it's kind of a way of avoiding the actual argument, which is that it's a damaging or a negative profession.
Yeah, it's not like it's not like it's not a valid. Not I say valid, but it's not like it's not a form of employment that doesn't make money or isn't profitable, because it. Let's be honest, it is one of the most profitable professions in human history. But I've never heard someone seriously argue that it's not real work, quote unquote.
I mean, but you know what? That's such kind of like, that's always said tongue in cheek, the thing that he said before, where he's like, oh, it's the oldest profession. Like, it's not like he's like stating that like that's a known fact, and just like, no. It's always like just said tongue in cheek. It's not true.
Yeah, it's kind of almost a truism.
Older than like hunters.
I'm pretty sure.
Like,
yeah. I think the hunter-gatherer was probably the first profession. Like, I hunt and then you give me money in exchange for food. I think that was probably first, because yeah, I mean, mating would have been a different arrangement in pre-civilized humanity. My guess is prostitution didn't really start to be a thing until agrarian civilization, really.
Until
city, some kind of village or city developed.
Yeah.
I mean, some hunter-gatherers had like little tiny communities. I mean, they weren't necessarily always like nomadic and moving from place to place.
I think though in a tiny community, it wouldn't look like prostitution. It would be like it would be you're a part of a harem group, probably. Like you're just one of the women in the clan under a certain patriarch, and you're there in exchange for food and protection. And if you want to call that prostitution, I guess it wasn't a great situation. Certainly wasn't girl. You weren't girl bossing it. Let's say that.
Girl boss.
Yes.
I do remember
OnlyFans.
I remember you did a video on Lascaux Cavern, and within the cavern, they did find a girl boss mug from the Paleolithic era.
Oh, wow.
So
amazing.
Actually funny considering this conversation on sex and sex work took place on the Howard Stern show. And if you don't know who Howard Stern is, he literally built his conglomerate, his whole business off of boobs, tits, and sex workers for the first 40 years at least of his career. And sure,
I mean, it was a little more than that.
He
was kind of funny. It was kind of comedy, kind of shock. Social commentary.
Yeah,
it was a little more than just like here's boobs on the radio.
Yes, the radio where you can see boobs.
I mean, I'm sure they talked about boobs plenty.
Yeah, they did talk about it. I mean, come on now.
Yeah, yeah.
And shock jocks.
This is what we were talking about. The shock jock has kind of turned a little bit later in his career, and I think that's probably normal. You're on the radio that long.
Yeah, people.
There's going to be cultural, social shifts. That might be what's going on with Stern.
Especially when you're one of those people that's kind of riding the edge of culture the whole time, which are what like shock jocks and comedians from that era were doing. Like, of course, there's going to be cultural shifts where you look back and be like, well, maybe that wasn't so great.
Yeah, I don't know where Stern goes with it, but I would wonder if he agrees with her at all, sees some truth in what she says.
Oh, with his interview with Billie Eilish, I think you'll be surprised.
Sure, he's gotten rid of the butt bongo fiestas, but that doesn't excuse that, much like many social medias, you built your work off of sex work. So the fact that Howard goes into a specific part of this conversation with a very sex-negative lens is very surprising. And Howard's not the only one that has profited or just been revolutionized by porn. While it's not always the inventor or creator.
So just remember that Howard Stern's going into this with a sex-negative lens.
Okay, sex-negative.
Leader of a product, it is, much like me in college, ready and willing to try new things and experiment. While you might not like porn, Billy, without it, we wouldn't have had many things, like, for instance, the popularization of cameras, DSLR cameras, the VHS, which was overtaken from the Betamax because it was easier to put porn on, and even like...
Okay, first off, I think home video cameras would have been just fine without porn.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of shitty horror videos from the 80s that are probably the bigger reason to why VHS took off.
Well, and yeah, that's another thing that's kind of a myth, that the reason VHS took off was because of porn. VHS took off because it was cheaper alternative to Beta, although Beta is much better quality, I will say. And actually, a lot of television studios still use Beta to keep backups, like analog backups for things. It's still in use today.
Kind of this notion that without sex, civilization would just stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, to some degree, I kind of agree. But on the other hand, there are other uses for VHS and cameras than just porn.
I feel like that
certainly the money probably helped.
I feel like that viewpoint speaks to a really specific, kind of narrow way of thinking about the world, just exclusively in terms of like human urges, which is kind of its own thing.
Yeah. But yeah, probably not the case that we would not have cameras or VHS tapes without porn. I think we can agree.
If you really abstract it, the reason we have penicillin is actually because of porn.
Oh.
Yeah, if we didn't have STDs, we wouldn't have penicillin.
That's true.
So thanks syphilis today. Give it a big old kiss.
Actually, you know that Listerine...
Actually, don't kiss syphilis.
Oh.
Yeah,
what?
Bad idea. But Listerine actually used to be used as an all-purpose sanitizer and cleaner before it was used to make mouthwash. They actually used it to clean floors, dishes, laundry detergent, and gonorrhea.
Well,
that explains
there
the
you go.
taste.
So horrors saved civilization again.
processing systems which were put in place to help sell porn, and now we use for all of our major shopping online. Even streaming services like Netflix, you wouldn't be able to chill without having porn help to revolutionize that part of the industry as well. But with every fellatio also...
What does that even mean? Streaming?
He's saying porn invented everything on the internet.
But that's not what Netflix is for, though. Like, I'm pretty sure they don't even allow pornographic content on
Maybe
Netflix.
he's talking about streaming itself, but I don't think even streaming was revolutionized by pornography.
I think video games had a larger impact on streaming than pornography did.
Probably, yeah.
I think this is some very loose history that he's threading together.
Well, I mean, if we remember back on the Kink at Pride videos, history is not very much a strong suit.
Yeah.
Just kind of make stuff up.
Also comes fallacy, and this feels like the appropriate part to kind of jump into the conversation about an hour into this interview, where Billie starts to talk about their experience with writing a song that was about porn.
Duh.
So is this one of her actual still from her music videos? It's very
Is it?
Weirdly David Fincher or David Lynchian.
I think she may do some sort of Lynchian stuff with her music video.
That's cool.
Look.
I like creativity.
Yeah, she is very creative. I'll credit her that.
By the way, what was that second song you did? It's from the new album on Saturday Night Live. I thought that was beautiful. What is that song? And what is that about?
You.
I think it's about porn.
There is a verse about porn. It's called Male Fantasy. Distract myself with pornography.
Wait a sec. Distract myself with pornography? What? Well, it sounds like you've got a negative outlook on whatever you're trying to avoid, first and foremost, Billie. But let's keep listening. Right there in the song, that verse, it's a fantasy. Porn is this fantasy, and I think she knows that. But then we go into the effects that she thinks porn has on everyone, and it gets a little, in the interview itself, it just, it makes me start to, it hurt, because I know that trauma is real, and I know the trauma she has is real, but the guys and the perspective at which she's taking it is just so upsetting and disheartening.
Oh, I like how he's before she's even said anything, he's like priming you to think whatever she's saying is wrong with this like sad piano music. He's being very emotional about it. Like, it's very manipulative.
It's going to be so hurtful, guys.
It's going to be so hurtful what she says about how porn affected her.
Looking at the lyrics right now, and let's see, the first verse, actually it's the first verse in the song. It goes, home alone, trying not to eat, distract myself with pornography. I hate the way she looks at me. I can't stand the dialogue. She would never be that satisfied. It's a male fantasy. I'm going back to therapy. I guess that this verse at least talks about how hypersexuality and especially pornography causes people to feel disillusioned or have their expectations warped as to what intimacy is like.
Yeah, or turn inward on themselves. They hate their bodies because they don't match what they're seeing. Yeah.
And
or can cause strain between partners, and it is something that happens.
Yeah. And it's not just a porn thing though. It's like this is a thing that like feminists have talked about for a couple decades now. How young girls see models in like People magazine or pictures of celebrities, like people like the Kardashians. They have their image photoshopped and basically sculpted to this impossible standard. And so young women try to match it by going on all sorts of fad diets and taking supplements or fasting, or giving themselves an eating disorder and things like that. And I don't think that is entirely without validity, because I think there are parts of, especially for young women, it's a very big problem.
Well, I mean, social contagion is a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think what's interesting about that, in comparison to, say, ancient forms of art that depicted nudity, or even erotic art from sort of pre-photo era, right? Pre-film era, is now a lot of the imagery we take in is not real. It's a simulacrum, but it appears real. Sort of this weird dual process where we look at the thing and it looks real, but it's also not. Whereas art before this era, you would have looked at it and be like, okay, it's obviously not real. It's like it's a cartoonish, or it's a artistic depiction of something, we wouldn't be tricked by it in a sense.
Are you
And
talking about hentai waifus?
Yeah, so even I think it would be valid, right? If you're looking at anime porn, are you tricking yourself into thinking real women look like that? Probably not.
Women don't have huge bug eyes.
They don't
We-
have this.
I mean, we can get into it now, but I have some opinions about kind of like porn art and how it kind of focuses in on like one aspect that somebody then builds an entire, I guess, kink paraphilia around. And it's something that's so extreme that it just doesn't exist in the real world.
Yeah.
But then they just focus in on that, and it just damages kind of their ability to have intimacy or have satisfying sexual relationships in the real world. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder. We could watch some more of the interview and then. I think that would be good.
Started talking about like something. I just like I thought about this thing about like porn, and I was just talking about how weird porn is. And
Porn's weird. I completely agree. I wholeheartedly.
And we were just joking about like how weird it is, and just the idea of writing a verse about porn. And
that's funny.
And how it doesn't fucking make it. It's as a woman, I think porn is a disgrace. And I used to watch a lot of porn, to be honest. I started watching porn when I was like 11.
Wow.
And
okay, I'm going to stop it there for a second because wow, indeed, like that's a very young age. But throughout this conversation, I'm going to stop and kind of interject and give you my opinion, or at least points and maybe even factual data as far as studies and what I've found, and maybe just have a conversation with you. But like right here, the wow of it all, the surprise, I'm sadly not surprised by that. I'm interested to know why Billy thinks it's a disgrace and disgusting, but according to the Guttemacher Institute, they fight and educate on reproductive.
He added a word there. I hope you all noticed that, where he said it's a disgrace and
what
disgusting.
word did he add?
Disgusting. I don't think she said that.
Yeah, that is interesting how he adds disgusting to that, though. Because like a disgrace. So a disgrace is like what's the definition of disgrace? Like a loss of reputation, a loss of respect.
Yeah, a loss
That's
of
what disgrace
like
is.
Nobility.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have a sense of the sacred that's broken.
A loss of respectability in the eyes of other people.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know much about straight porn, but knowing what I know about the kind of porn that I do watch and the certain roles that are involved, I would imagine that women on that receiving end tend to be portrayed as in disgraceful ways, to say the least.
Yeah,
Imagine.
I can't deny that, in my experience at least.
They're a very, very well-known institute that has actually done a study that says upwards of 80% of teens, that's everyone before the age of 14, whether intentionally or not, has consumed or seen porn in some sort of fashion. And in the lack of sex ed or sex education properly taught, they see that as a form of sex education. And that's a problem. Wow.
Duh.
Okay, I'll agree with that. That is a problem.
I think that's perfectly reasonable to say. And I think that to some extent, I think there's a bit of a, it shouldn't really, in a sense, sex education shouldn't be as controversial as it is. Because it's just sort of common sense that kids need to know these things at a certain age. Obviously, you shouldn't be teaching it to kids under the age of 10, but once kids enter adolescence, they're going to start, feeling adolescent feelings, and they need to learn how to understand where these are coming from and how to take care of them in a way that isn't destructive. And looking at pornography when you're like 11, 12, 13, I would say that's very destructive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I mean,
that's
I
your
didn't
first
grow up.
intimacy. That's not.
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine. I mean, I didn't grow up with internet in the household.
Yeah,
like we didn't get internet in my house until I was like 17.
Yeah.
I don't think that. Yeah, I didn't get like internet until I was like 14. Like not consistently, at least.
But I can imagine that viewing pornography at that young age definitely has an effect, a deep effect.
It warps your understanding of what intimacy is.
Yeah, absolutely. But here's the thing about the sex education is that when the conversation around sex education happens, it's always the two extremes that get brought up. You either get the very conservative where it's abstinence only, and you hear the horror stories of people being like, "Oh, if you hold hands, you'll get pregnant." And then you get the other side of it. It's true.
Though. Come on, that's
what you learn from your MPreg.
Yeah.
When a boy loves another boy very much and he casts a magical spell, then
the baby happens.
Then the baby happens. Or you get the other extreme where it's the very sort of like leftist, woke-ish thing where they're like teaching kids how to do blowjobs.
Yeah, it's like everything in excess versus complete restriction.
But those are just the extremes of the scale that are brought up to, make people angry and get clicks. Like,
basically the only reason why you see so many wackos on these kinds of issues, and why these issues are the only reason these issues are as prominent as they are is because people in like media outlets emphasize them for clicks. I guarantee most people don't actually hold these crazy positions.
No.
And it's just...
I mean, the whole country is not San Francisco.
Thankfully.
Not yet.
I want to interject because as a teacher, I've had opportunity to overhear kids talk about issues like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one time I overheard a very distressing line of conversation where kids were telling each other that their parents never talked to them about sex. And these are teenagers. These are like 15, 16-year-olds. Their parents never broke it down for them. They were just too embarrassed to do it. And so the kids had to learn everything from porn.
Yeah.
And a lot of these kids are watching anime porn too, which is like, well, you're definitely not going to get especially biologically accurate information from that, I have to say.
Yeah. Minami-san no Furanari is not the best way to understand.
And especially
kind of
teenage girls who end up reading a lot of pornographic fan fiction. And these are people I am familiar with, and I know the kind of stuff they write and read. And it's just very bizarre. Mm-hmm. And it's clearly the result of parents just kind of hand waving and not taking initiative, and schools either ineffectively or just not at all telling them basic facts. So I would be a strong advocate of at least telling them how it works. There's a way to educate about sex without necessarily making it an instruction manual at an early age. You just tell them how it works.
When I was in school, and I went to one of the top-rated high schools in the country for public schools, I mean, we had a pretty robust sex education curriculum that wasn't like here's how you fuck, or it wasn't like if you fuck you'll die. Like, it wasn't like one of those kinds of things. It was like, here, this is what happens. The things inside the penis will swell with blood and it'll become erect, and then all that kind of jazz.
And you figure out how babies happen, and it's like, okay, that's important information to know.
Yeah.
Right?
I had a similar...
Yeah. Like, we had anatomy charts that we had to fill out, and we had to point out okay, so this is the fallopian tubes, these are the seminal vesicles, this is how testicles work, this is how a uterus and fallopian tubes and ovaries work, and the egg implants here, this is how sperm, and then it divides into the zygote and all that. It was very educational.
Yeah, my experience in, I think it was like a 7th or 8th grade health class is when they taught us sex ed, and they taught us a little bit more of it in high school as well. And it was not lurid or salacious in any way. It was just very dry, very, very reasonable. They showed it. I think we watched a lot of videos in health class. I don't know if this is true for anybody else, but we watched a lot of videos on like anatomy and stuff in health class.
Yeah,
at least in my experience. And one of them was basically sort of like an X-ray view of a man and a woman having sex, and it was very just went into all the details of the male anatomy, the female anatomy, how an egg traveled into from the ovary into the vagina and so on, and how the sperm and the egg unite and so on. And it was very matter of fact. It was very almost medical, like dry and medical,
Yeah.
And I think that might be one of the better ways to approach the subject if you're going to teach it in a school setting. And it was similar thing in high school too. Talked about.
Are they not doing that? I mean, I haven't been a teacher in several years, and I never taught a sex class. So it was not the types of students I taught couldn't learn that kind of stuff really, but or wouldn't learn it till later. But Kav, do they still teach sex education? Because I know when I was leaving education, a lot of things like this were being replaced with like social emotional learning or like anti-bullying learning or big trust group kind of thing.
I know we have health classes. I don't know specifically the content that gets covered. I assume there's a sex health component. I can only assume. But we are in a high school, so that's what I would expect. But I don't know. I don't know how it's handled. I assume teachers kind of individually decide, at least health teachers decide how they want to cover it. I think when I was in high school, it was fairly dry and fairly conservative, maybe.
I mean, I think it almost needs to be conservative.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that kind of sex education that we're talking about that we grew up with is getting attacked in a way where it used to be attacked by conservatives, but now it's being attacked by the other side of the political spectrum for not being inclusive of, all genders, all orientations, that kind of thing.
There's inclusivity problems. I think there's also this new wave is sex positivity, which is not a component in traditional health classes. It's not a pro-sex or sex positivity type program. And I think that's what a lot of them want. They want more sex positivity for teenagers. So a lot of the sex channels on YouTube that are aimed kind of at teenagers they have this sort of babyish aesthetic, and they draw in very young people, and it's all very sex positive, and that's kind of the tone that they want.
Yeah,
they want teenagers to experiment in some sense.
And I think I would consider that kind of material to be bordering on the salacious in a way that would make it unsuitable for a school setting.
I don't think that
you shouldn't be encouraging teenagers to experiment ever.
Yeah. Although this was also a thing that was brought up in high school in my 9th or 10th grade health class. We watched, like I said, a lot of videos in health class. One of them, and they were like older videos from like the 70s, 80s, 90s. And one of them was specifically about birth control. And it went very, like I said, all the videos were very dry, matter of fact. And they just went into detail about the different kinds of birth control, like condoms, female condoms, IUDs, the little sponges, and so
Elaine
on.
from Seinfeld's favorite, yes.
But yeah, it was very matter of fact, very dry, and I think that ultimately that actually, I was actually kind of, I remember having to watch that in health class, and then I was like, female condoms are a thing? It's like, but yeah, I think that kind of way of relaying information in a way that's neither sex negative nor sex positive is probably the best option if you want to actually encourage people to be responsible.
Sex neutralists, sex centrists.
Yes.
And where do you think porn fits into this? Because this is his whole thing. To get back into the video, his whole thing is he wants porn to be part of what's discussed in sex education curriculum. And I think you can do it.
Yes,
you can discuss look, there is this medium out here. It's called pornography. It's very adult. You shouldn't watch it. And I think you should show here's the effects of long time porn viewing.
Yeah,
but I don't think that he agrees with that.
Well, let's see.
Yeah.
Let's keep listening.
I didn't understand why it was a bad thing. I thought that's how you learned how to have sex. I mean, my mom has this thing that she's told me that completely traumatized her, which is that I was complaining to my mom because I'm very open with my parents and my family, and I was like, oh, my friend's mom doesn't let her watch porn. And my mom was like, what? Do you watch porn? And I was like, yeah. She was like, you do? And I was like, yeah. And she was appalled. And she was like, well, why? And I was like, how else am I supposed to learn to have sex? She was horrified by that. And I used to be like the person that would like talk about porn all the time. I'd be like, oh, it's so stupid that anybody would think that porn is bad or fucked up, or, you know, I think it's so cool and it's great and it's
What kind of porn were you watching, Billy?
And I get chills just because I'm like, this conversation is not what should be happening of all shows on the Howard Stern show with this perspective and with this tone, because I feel for Billie here. Sounds like they were very sex positive, you know? They were,
oh, you know, we're teens and we're gonna be cool and we're learning about sex and we watch porn.
Even in this instance, and Billie talks about it, there was trauma, there was disgust from her mother, and that kind of reaction from a parent or someone that you look up to when you're talking about something that you might be passionate about or super interested in, puts this very negative gaze.
Hi, gay.
People talk about how parents shame their child when they start to touch themselves or explore their bodies, and that leads to heightened trauma or self-image issues when they get older. But we do have studies.
So his issue, because he just totally just ignored like what she was talking about. And he's saying like, oh, it was very good that they were watching porn. They were very positive about it. They were saying, oh, yes, I love exploring sex in this way. And then when the mother said, oh, my gosh, you're viewing porn, that's what he's pointing to as, oh, that's probably the cause of her trauma. Is the mother being like, no, well, I can't believe you watch porn.
Yeah.
You're 11.
I'd be curious. She doesn't seem to clarify when this conversation happened, whether it was when she was quite young or when she was a bit older. But I wouldn't be shocked, you know, an 11-year-old who doesn't know better might blurt out something like that to their mom. Like, oh, I can't believe so-and-so's mom won't let them watch porn.
Yeah.
Just if you're kind of naive. And
reminds me of a story when I was a kid. One time I was at my mom's house on the weekend, and my mom had my dad did not have internet at his house, but my mom had a computer. And as a kid, I watched like a lot of Tom and Jerry. So, and in a lot of Tom and Jerry cartoons, Tom was like distracted by a hot lady cat or whatever. And so just after watching Tom and Jerry, I go to Internet Explorer and I just type in hot ladies in the search bar. And this is when I was like, this is before I knew what pornography was. And
ladies.
Like, and because it's Internet Explorer, it just freezes up. And it's stuck like that for 5 minutes. And so I'm going to Mom. She's like, Mom, can you help me with this? I'm just trying to look up something. And it's frozen. And she's like, what are you trying to look up? And I just blurted out hot ladies. And she's like, what the It's like, oh my God.
I'm trying to look up hot ladies, Mom. Come on.
And did that damage you so much as a child that sex negative that you just could never even look at your penis when you were taking a shower? It was so sex negative.
No, you know what it did? It turned them off women.
Oh,
actually, yeah. I think she was partially horrified and partially kind of laughing. She's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?"
I would probably have the same reaction if that were my kid. I'm like, "What are you doing?"
Pretty sure it was the middle of summer too. So she was like, "That's it. Go outside and play."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Aw," and just like just go outside. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I find it so interesting how he's taking this thing that Billie Eilish is identifying, like, wow, this was fucked up that I believe this, that I don't think that this was healthy, that I thought like this, and he's pointing at that and saying, oh, that's super healthy, that's sex positive, you were being so great. No. The people telling you that was unhealthy, that's what gave you trauma.
Yeah, and he really breezed over the 11-year-old thing. He's like, yeah, that's kind of young, but anyway, it's super positive, so it's okay. It's okay to be really young when you watch it, as long as you're sex positive.
He just kind of farted that stat out there, just like, well, 80% of people under 14 have viewed porn, and I mean, that's not great. They're learning about it all from sex, but it's so great that they're sex positive about porn in this way.
Yeah, it's like incoherent because why is it a bad thing? Yeah, for an 11-year-old to look at porn if porn is great?
Exactly.
What's the conflict there? I don't think he actually knows. Just kind of saying what he thinks is socially acceptable to say, which is that
or something that doesn't. I mean, remember, he's a porn actor. He works in porn. He's made a living off of porn. Well, I don't know if he's made a living off of porn. I think he did other things too. But I mean, he is a porn actor. He's in porn. So of course, things that are going to challenge that, he's going to push back on.
I mean, it is something.
I was going to ask. I wonder if he I wonder if because he's a porn actor, he views criticism of pornography as sort of a personal attack in some way.
Oh, absolutely.
I can see there's some personal hurt here in his voice. I do wonder, and I don't want to take this conversation to a totally different place, but the sex positive ethos as a sum total, I'm not sure how they figure out why it's wrong for prepubescents or children to be exposed to sexuality. I'm not really sure how they even formulate that. What would be their argument against exposing a child to porn?
I think they're all for it now. Like the real strong sex positive types.
Yeah, I don't see any pushback saying, "Oh no, we don't want kids to be exposed to this stuff." Actually, they're quite openly okay with it.
Did we ever mention Sappho and her tweet afterwards?
No, we didn't not on this show. But we all remember our favorite zoophile dog lover, Sappho. Turned out also huge pedophile. Was
huge
having sexual sexual chats with minors in her Discord server. So not great.
But her reasoning for the pedophilia was the most disgusting thing, because it was something along the lines of, no, children can consent. They just because they don't know about sex, because nobody's born with that knowledge, doesn't mean they can't consent. You just need to teach them about it.
Oh,
that was her whole thing.
That is good.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
Yeah,
not a surprise. If you think dogs can consent, you think toddlers can consent too.
Yeah, not a big leap there. Surprising.
Wow.
Would have never thunk it. Wow.
Wow.
Studies that say that watching porn helps to feel less repressed, helps to get stress out, be more open-minded or tolerant of other sexes or sexualities. And sometimes watching porn can help you realize that what your body's doing is okay. I'll even use a real-world example. The first time I jerked off unknowingly by humping into a couch, I thought I had broken something. I thought my body did something wrong.
Hi, gay.
So it does provide a form of sex education, but it should not be without knowing the difference between porn fantasy and porn reality, which makes me remember the first time I even was taught sex education. Mine was very,
don't have sex, because you will get pregnant and die.
They split up the guys and the girls, and my teacher said that we were
that's right how it should be.
We were not going to talk about masturbation. We were not going to talk about any preventatives or contraception. So like condoms were out the door. Condoms. And we absolutely weren't going to talk about porn. And that was the first instance that I was sex shamed. And it wasn't even for the terrible braces either. Cause like we were all awkward at that point, right? We were all awkward and we all looked a little funny, right? But like it was cute. We were young. In all seriousness though.
Did you guys have that thing where the teacher like shows you how to put a condom on a cucumber?
No, we had that in the video.
Oh, it was a video. It wasn't like the teacher actually shows it.
Yeah, well, the teacher put the condom in their mouth, and then they showed us how to.
Yes, the Mr. Garrison method.
Oh shit! South Park did that joke. Fuck.
Yeah, it's there's a whole episode about it where they're talking about what's the right age to start teaching kids about sex ed, and Garrison ends up teaching sex education to kindergartners.
Oh, and here I thought I was original. Fuck.
And he's like, you put the condom in your mouth, then he has a banana and apply. He just deep throats the banana.
It's important for kindergartners.
Well, around Sappho.
That's fair.
How do you even put a condom on a dog?
There's the thing, you don't.
That's the neat thing. You don't.
You just raw dog it.
Oh no.
No.
Oh.
Well, you ain't getting pregnant at least.
Yeah.
Made with mutant dog human hybrids.
Well, whatever you do, don't give the dog a mango.
I don't know that reference.
That's a Seinfeld. Oh, it's an episode of Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Oh.
What happens when you give a dog a mango? I'm afraid to ask.
It's basically
is it like when you give a mouse a cookie or a moose a muffin?
No, so George basically feels like he can't feel it down there anymore. Then Kramer gives him a mango to eat because Kramer gets banned from the fruit store, and so they have to buy his fruit for him. And like Kramer gives George a piece of mango, and he's like,
banned from the fruit store.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. But Kramer gives George a mango, and he's like, feels like I got a B12 shot. It moved. Oh my god, it moved! And he's like, he grabs the rest of the mango and runs out the door. Apparently, the mango gives him his mojo back.
An aphrodisiac, very nice.
Well, I know mangoes make me feel that way.
Remember that experience and multiple classes and the scare tactics that were used by our coach that didn't really want to be there and didn't know much about sex besides what they had to read out of that textbook. So I feel for Billy and people like Billy that went through that shame at such an early age, because now they build on top of that with other experiences, which I'm sure we're going to learn about through the podcast.
What kind of porn were you watching, Billy?
I don't think shame around sex is necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I feel like there's a really bad understanding of what shame is in general.
Because you kind of got to have the understanding that there is a place and a time for sex.
I mean, yeah, right. Shame is just a sense of shame is basically sort of part of having discipline as a person. Mm-hmm. And it's not just with regards to sex, but with other appetites in general. Like, you'll feel shameful if you eat like a whole pie by yourself. Or if you are the only person in the drive-thru and you order a bunch of food, or whatever, right? Same thing applies. Like if you're constantly having sex or jerking off all the time,
I'm gonna throw them a bone and say, if we were to put shame aside as a word, I think I would use something more like dignity. That's what should be sought out, the sense of dignity. I think that sometimes when we misappropriate or put sex in places where it shouldn't be, or do things that are inappropriate, that's part of a loss of dignity there. Maybe that's a better way to frame it. Because I think
that you already have inherent dignity and that you're depleting your dignity by doing that.
Yeah, because shame, I think, is easily misapplied to things that are probably just neutral. Like obviously, so girls, for instance, when they first have their period, right, it can be very shameful. It can be a very traumatic event for some of them, and I think
you should be ashamed about it. It's disgusting.
We would do well to not so much push shame, but be like, okay, this is a natural bodily process. It's part of the deal. It's not something you should parade around because it's a biological function, and there's a time and a place to talk about it, and that's not with an audience. But
God, can't you just hold it in? Jesus.
Yeah, just hold it. But you should do things to maintain your dignity. That's why you have things to prevent leakage everywhere. Because you're preserving your dignity. You're trying to have that relationship with other people where you're not disgusting people.
So would you characterize free bleeding as undignified?
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like there might be, I think, at least in our society, we put too much negative baggage on the word shame. I think you could argue that there are different kinds of shame. Like there's unhealthy shame where you have no self-esteem. And then there's healthy shame. That's the opposite of, being shameless, right?
Yeah.
And I think that in trying to get rid of the sort of unhealthy shame, we sort of get rid of the healthy kind of shame, that dignity. Because when we try to empower people by saying you should not have any shame, we also are inadvertently telling people you shouldn't have any dignity either. And I think there might be two sides of the same coin here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because on one hand,
that's a good way to tie it, what we were talking about, up into a nice, neat little bow.
I need to just stop for a second. We just talked about how this was a trauma that Billy had, and then he goes right into the jugular and asks about the porn. Who just comes out of nowhere and asks what porn you were looking up?
So what kind of porn are you looking at over there, huh?
When you're 11, I want to know what kind of porn are you supposed to.
Yeah. I gotta agree with this. What the fuck kind of question is that? And I get that it's Howard Stern, but what the fuck kind of question is that?
That's what khavvah says at the beginning of the episode. What are you talking about?
That's it kind of reminds me of if Howard Stern has a female guest on his radio show and he's like, so you gonna show me those boobs? It's
makes for good radio, I guess.
Showing money makers.
It's I'm
gonna show them if I want to.
It's like if you had a guest on.
Now.
Oh dear.
Oh
Okay.
God! What the fuck? Why
It's
are
like-
there 3?
I'm a cat. There's at least 6 down there.
It's like a non sequitur though. It's like you have a female guest on Howard Stern and she's like, my ex-boyfriend gave me hepatitis C. I have like 2 weeks left to live, and then Howard's like, you gonna show me those tits? Fuck you, Howard, I'm dying.
You want to show me those boobs?
I guess the fair part of the question, I think, is the fact that she revealed she was watching at 11 and watching a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
I
think it's a pretty
too
fair
would be curious, like, okay, at 11, what kind of stuff are you watching that caused like this later traumatic sort of response when you realized
Any furry comics?
that it wasn't normal?
She was reading 2 kinds.
Oh no, she's reading 2 kinds. My favorite furry webcomic, 2 kinds.
Yeah.
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 Well, it was either 2 kinds or Proxy Page.
I don't know what
Don't
that
look
is,
that
and
up,
I
by
don't
the
want
way.
to-
How
Don't
about
look that up.
I'm not.
Go Get a Roomie?
I'm not looking that up.
Oh God, no.
I don't want to know.
What kind of porn were you watching, Billy?
Howard. No, I was
No.
not.
She's there
I
with
was
her brother.
watching-
That is
I
so
was
inappropriate.
watching, abusive porn,
Howard
to be
Stern,
honest.
relax, buddy.
And I have
S&M?
to tell you, yeah. And I
Okay.
have to, and you know, when I was like 14, and dude, oh my God, my publicist is probably so angry back there. Not angry, but
Billy, shut the hell up. But Billy, stop.
Ooh. Okay, so I'm not saying that the porn Billy to see was like abusive, but the immediate correlation of BDSM and abuse is just so disheartening as well. Let's say we
What? That's what BDSM is, isn't
It's
it?
a
What does
fetish.
BDSM
It's a
stand
fetish
for?
for abuse.
Well,
That's where you
for
fetishize being
No,
abused.
BDSM stands for bondage and discipline, sadism and masochism.
Nothing's.
I thought the D was for domination.
It can be, I guess. I don't know. Dominance or submission is in there too. Yeah,
I
isn't
wouldn't
like
want a
like
14-year-old watching BDSM.
like quote unquote
Right.
abuse? Isn't that part of like the spanking? Don't you like step on them? I'm not sure what BDSM
There's
is. They tie it up.
slapping, hitting. Sometimes there's
Like, yeah.
non-consensual elements that
Slapping,
that are
hitting,
role played.
It seems like a
Brazilian
lot of
wax.
work.
A lot of work to get off. Oh,
Yeah. You got to get like a uniform, a costume. You got to know your knots. So
you got to
I guess
install
I
a
was in the Boy
cage
Scouts.
under your bed.
Yeah.
So much work.
You gotta watch Eyes Wide Shut so many times.
But yeah, I mean, isn't that what BDSM is? Is simulated abuse, right?
And I imagine like BDSM porn
guess.
doesn't always. It's sort of in the fantasy.
It's the fantasy. Yeah, in the fantasy.
it's
They're not going to
not
show
like-
the actors ahead of time signing the contracts and being like, okay, so you're going to do this. Like, they don't show them blocking the scenes.
Or giving safe words or any of that.
Yeah.
It's going to just simulate these sort of scenarios.
I can't remember where I heard this, but I heard that someone described BDSM as being a very intimate thing that only you and your partner would do, and it's about trust that the other person can actually do this safely.
Uh-huh.
And making it into like pornography just sort of flies in the face of that idea. So it's just weird.
Yeah, I don't know if I would even call it BDSM if it's in porn
So
necessarily.
is it like buying a house and taking out a mortgage? Is that BDSM? Because it's all about trust.
Of a kind, yes.
Yes.
It is masochism. Maybe
The
they'll say
banks
this.
do sure fuck you.
It's between you, your partner, and the bank.
Oy vey.
No, 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 no.
Oh, no.
And
That one's for you,
run
Megan.
by.
Oh no. Oh, please don't drag her into this.
We had porn literacy, which is an actual thing that does exist within some curriculums in high school. It is this idea that we talk about porn as an actual fantasy thing. We talk about things like, hey, porn is this kind of weird profession, but it's been around for forever. And you know what? Women, it's one of the only
Hold on,
professions
hold
where
on.
women are.
Porn itself, in its current form, has not been around forever.
I'm gonna push back on that. I'm gonna push
It
back
was
on that.
invented with film, and film, well,
Yeah, in the
Probably was-
modern sense of like internet pornography, no, it's not been around in that sense
Yeah,
forever. Like
It
there's
has been
erotic
piped in the
parts.
homes.
Yes. So it went through several stages, right? So you had pictures, which I can only assume people were taking pictures of naked people pretty soon after the camera was mainstreamed.
I mean, if you're drawing nude figures, then
you're going to be taking pictures of them too. And some of them had to have been for the purpose of sexual gratification. And then you had film, which over time became mainstream, and that became the film porn industry, which was still very niche in the sense that you had to go to a store and buy it, and it wasn't something that just lived in your house. Then we had the internet, and even before streaming was around, you had to like download porn. So it was a very different mechanism even then. So the whole streaming porn from your phone is like less. What would be your estimate? How old would that technology be?
Streaming porn from your phone?
Yeah. It's got to be maybe 30.
Less than 20 years, definitely.
About less than 20 years.
It's got to be like since the last, 10 years, at least since the smartphone has taken over.
Yeah. So early 2000s, I think, would have been when smartphones kind of took over.
Definitely less than a generation.
Yeah, less than a generation. So this is like the way it exists now, which is very different, is very new. Yeah, it's definitely not been around forever.
Yeah,
always paid the best, generally. It's also something that involves BDSM sometimes. And it's not abuse because there is so much conversation about consent happening. For instance, using my own experiences again, I've worked with kink.com many a times. There's an entire sheet that you fill out as far as what you're into, not into. You have a huge long conversation before the videos even start rolling. Then you have breaks in between where you get check-ins. And then you have this huge long after unpacking where aftercare hopefully happens. Consent is there.
I'm sorry, this sounds like it's really has something to do with abuse, because if you're going to have to go through all of these steps to prevent it, it's kind of saying something about what you're doing, isn't it?
That it's dangerous.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, it's like firearm safety.
Yeah.
You're clearly doing something that's risky.
Yeah, and it's something just like we just said, none of that's on camera. None of the paperwork is on camera showing people at home. Like, I had to go through all these checks and balances to make sure that I wasn't doing anything I didn't want to do.
Could you imagine, though? So hot.
So hot. So by the time you're on the film doing BDSM type scenarios, like all that context is lost. This whole idea of consent and aggressive consent is not going to be displayed to potentially very young people consuming it. And it's interesting. Just recently on Twitter, and maybe I'll find this video clip and include it in the edit. There's a woman who used to be a porn star who basically quit because the industry was so terrible to her. She talks about how, oh yeah, there were checklists, but they would lie about what was in the video. I would show up on set, or my agent. They would talk to my agent and say, hey, will they do this? And my agent would just say yes. And then I'd show up not knowing what was going on. And I'd check off things. And then they'd ignore what I checked off and go through scenarios anyway.
I wasn't told that was what was going to happen to me. It just happened. And they label the videos whatever the fuck they want. I had no control over any of that. The outfits, the lines, what happened to me? Nothing. And yes, you get a checklist of yeses and nos, but do they listen to them? Absolutely fucking not. And does your agent tell the people shooting the scenes, this girl doesn't want to do this or that? No. They say, yeah, she'd love to take that scene. We'll send her right the fuck over.
Like, it was just really awful to her. And at one point there was, I think the scene that broke her was some like vomit fetish scene that she didn't want to do, but ended up doing.
Oh,
God.
And so she quit. And then to this day, people on Twitter are like, oh, you do these horrible, nasty videos and you're criticizing porn. And she's like, I quit because of those scenes. Like, you don't understand. In like any industry, there are pockets of it that are not respectful of your wants. There are corrupt people who are just looking for money and will lie to you and manipulate you. And it's a very vulnerable situation for a lot of people.
Yeah, there's always a different dynamic when sex is involved. Always.
And especially for women.
Especially for women. No matter how positive, no matter how much you destigmatize whatever hang-ups you have about it, there's always going to be that.
Not only enthusiastically, but through every step of the scene. And of course a 14-year-old's going to watch that and they're not gonna know that it's consensual, or they're gonna think that that's real sex. And then that might actually lead to bad practices when you get into your relationships.
I was an advocate, and I, thought I was one of the guys and would talk about it and think I was really cool for not having a problem with it and not seeing why it was bad. And I think it really destroyed my brain. And I feel incredibly devastated that I was exposed to so much porn. I think that I had like sleep paralysis and these like almost like night terror / just nightmares because of it. I think that's how they started, because I would just watch abusive, BDSM, and that's what I thought was attractive. And I just didn't, it got to a point where like I couldn't watch anything else, like unless it was violent. I like didn't think it was attractive, and I was a virgin. I had never done anything, and so it led to problems.
Oh God.
Okay, this is a good spot to kind of chemically break down how something like that might happen. That
was super fucked up.
Yeah,
that was a bit like Danimal, you were saying earlier about how that sort of hyper focus on one thing can build into a paraphilia.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's part of the study you linked earlier too, where they were talking about how they studied men who had looked at porn and it affected the part of the brain that lights up and showed more wear and tear, where they require more stimulation to get that same feeling out. Like anybody who abuses anything that releases endorphins, drugs or alcohol, or people get addicted to video games, people get addicted to all kinds of stuff that like that, and I don't see why porn would be any different from that.
And there's a lot of interesting stuff in those studies. I know one portion, because the mechanism, there's always a question of causality, right? And I know you mentioned that in our discussion off screen.
Yeah.
The mechanism underlying it, though, is very well known, because this is the mechanism that we know happens with drug addiction, with alcoholism, so like chemical intake kinds of addictions. We haven't been studying behavioral addictions very long, but everything that researchers have done on like gambling addiction or sex addiction or food addiction seems to show like the exact same mechanism, which is where basically you get into a dopamine loop where you do the thing, you get the hit of dopamine, but then you start to do it so much that you're overwhelming your brain with dopamine. And your prefrontal cortex, which controls like not only pleasure, but also control, like your self-control, inhibition. Basically, that area of your brain is affected, and it shrinks over time. That's what happens with drug addiction. It shrinks, and as it shrinks, you need more dopamine to get the same hit, which is what you were saying.
Yeah.
One line that was interesting in one of the papers I found said that over time, if you consume too much porn, you actually will get more pleasure out of porn than actual intercourse.
Yeah, because that's what you set up as that mechanism that releases that dopamine.
So it can absolutely just like devastate your sexual relationships.
You've become habituated to a specific way of getting that hit, and you got to keep coming back to that hit over and over and over. And once just the amount you've consumed doesn't do it for you anymore, you get onto a hard to either increase in quantity or increase in, I guess, severity or how hardcore you're going to get. It's like with any other addictive substance. I like to make the analogy to alcohol, even though it's not a perfect analogy, but in many ways, alcohol dependency and dependency on pornography are kind of similar, in that a lot of the people, if not most people, who experience both alcohol and pornography probably won't become addicts in a long-term sense if they only use it once in a while or in small, moderate amounts. But potential for addictions is still there, and some people are more prone to it.
Yeah.
Whether it's environmental factors or genetic factors or family history, even. Like if your dad was an alcoholic and your grandfather was an alcoholic, chances are you're going to be an alcoholic too.
And it could be even if it could be that people with damaged prefrontal cortexes or just naturally smaller prefrontal cortexes could be especially vulnerable for that reason.
And I'm sure, I mean, when we're talking about 11-year-olds looking at this stuff,
right,
and
the
that
brains
we're noticing those, well, their brains are going to develop along those lines.
Oh shit, yeah.
Just like, I mean, they say that people who drink alcohol before they're 14 are more likely to become alcoholics. Well, that's why. That's why, because it affects their brain growth.
You're making so many connections so fast at that age.
Same
and
with
I'm positive.
Other drugs too, like tobacco, especially. A lot of long-term smokers, especially chain smokers, start when they're like 14, 15. Some older kid at high school maybe say, "Hey, you want to smoke? It's cool, right?" You know,
and
back
it
when
is
you
cool,
could still
right? We can all agree.
Still smoke in the boys' bathroom, right?
Smoking is very cool.
The smoking a Mario.
I did. You know what? I did smoke before I was 14, and I smoked for 10 years before I quit. Yeah. And I was probably up to a pack a day before I quit.
That's a hard drug to quit. How hard was it for you?
Oh my God. It was awful. I went cold turkey and I just basically couldn't. I just locked myself in my room for 2 weeks and just angry. Just couldn't do anything. Yeah. It was awful. Yeah. And I hid it so well from my parents that they had no idea why I was like so moody.
I'm kind of the opposite. I'm kind of the opposite because I didn't drink as a teenager, and I didn't drink alcohol until I was like in college. So after I was like 20, 21, I kind of made a choice to just not really bother with alcohol. That's as a New Year's resolution, and also because I'm a Buddhist, and in Buddhism you're not really supposed to use intoxicants. But I've had very little. This is sort of the opposite of your story, but I've had very little trouble in just not thinking about or wanting liquor of any kind.
And the basics of neuroscience would hold that.
Yeah.
Generally true. The younger you start a habit, the harder it is to break.
I mean, we know all these things about how these substances affect that, how these habits affect that. Why would porn be any different? Why would porn be any different? Because he's going to go on to say like, well, these studies don't, they're kind of interpretive. They're correlative studies. They don't really say what the issue is. But why? I mean, just logically, why would it be any different?
The one mechanism we know for sure is true is porn triggers dopamine. We just know this. This is an undeniable fact. And anything that triggers dopamine can have that dopamine cycle. It can flood your PFD with dopamine. That's what happens. So it's sort of a weak argument to say, oh, we don't really know. It's like, well, the one thing we do know is this mechanism, which is clearly at play. It just is.
Yeah.
Let's unpack that though. Let's talk about that. Does it destroy the brain?
Does it?
Does it?
Now, this is
take him as an example.
There's lots of people in the religious part.
Does porn cause you not to know history?
No, does porn cause you to wear a neoprene dog mask and go on OnlyFans?
It could. Yeah. We haven't done any studies on that yet, but
we'll see. Yet.
Conservative part that have all their studies that talk about how it does ruin relationships and blah, 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 blah. And then you have maybe the more left-leaning, more open people that talk about, the positives of it. It is all correlational. These studies are all correlational, and however you glean information from it depends on, honestly, what you're trying to talk about half the time. To talk about this, we have to say, what is porn? Porn is defined.
Of course they're correlational. You can't do this causational. So you'd have to subject like a child to pornography for X amount of years, right?
Yeah.
It would just be highly unethical.
Yeah. The one thing
that's insane.
That is
probably on money, get them on it.
In some sense, because it's such a young technology, we haven't had enough opportunity to really study this the right way. But I think a longitudinal study would be the thing. Is you take young people who have basically never watched porn, do brain scans, see what their brains are looking like, and then track them for 20 years and have them report how much porn they're consuming and how that shapes their brain through puberty. And that would be probably the next step. And we don't have that yet.
Honestly, I mean, we're kind of in the midst of a depression epidemic and nobody really knows why. But I wonder if that study is true that he was quoting earlier of that 80% of people pre-14 have watched porn, and we know these kinds of effects on the brain, not necessarily from porn, but from other things that are like porn. I wonder if that's kind of contributing to the depression epidemic, because people just can't get the satisfaction that they need to feel happy, to feel at ease, because that part of their brain has shrunk and not functioning
it's
correctly.
Possible, because prefrontal cortex shrinkage is related to mood disorders. You just can't. God. You get depressed and you get anxious.
And of course, once your dopamine receptors are sort of burnt out, in a sense, it just takes a very long time for them to get back into working order, if at all. And of course, without regular healthy functioning dopamine receptors, you feel like shit.
Yeah.
You know, anyone who's tried to, like we talked about, quitting drugs, drug habits, anyone who's tried to quit a drug habit knows what that's like. Or anybody with depression or depressive disorders knows what that's like too.
Yeah,
and for the audience at home, I would just like to point out that no, Matt Walsh does not have his hand up my ass and is puppeteering me to say these things about porn.
And that's the other thing, is they kind of paint research about porn's effects as sort of these fuddy-duddies secretly trying to be religious, conservative Christians behind the curtains.
Yeah. Well, I watched a Matt Walsh video on it, and he just straight out said that it should be made illegal and banned from society. And just like, well, maybe not that far.
Matt Walsh is not the brightest bulb in the box, is he?
I guess you could say we should do that, but it's also impossible. So I think it's kind of like it's like a pointless point to make. But this depiction of the other side is a bunch of fundamentalists. It's just untrue. I haven't found. I think probably the best research that's pro pornography could probably say is it's a stress relief, which I'm sure it is. Lots of things are stress reliefs. So
yeah, I mean, especially for a lot of those studies are going to focus on men.
Yeah,
because men are going to be the main porn consumers, and men are typically more open.
I think
about
it's also interesting
habits.
That we're in an age now where I would guess closer to 90-something% of young people are consuming porn. We're also in the midst of a bit of a sex recession. At the same time, so we're having more and more people getting into adulthood without any sexual experience.
Yeah,
even like basic sexual, like even kissing or hand holding. Those sort of first
hand holding.
Those first physically intimate things that you do as a preteen or a teen, where you're just kind of exploring a little bit, like that stuff is just it has been lost to an ocean of very explicit imagery that has become the first contact with this stuff. I feel like that might also be a connection here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And is the depiction of sexual interactions intended to cause arousal in some form? To that, I would ask, could Instagram be porn? Could romantic movies be porn? Could erotica be porn?
No.
Is TikTok porn? We'll actually come back to that point
TikTok
later.
Is
but to put it into better perspective, and I wish I came up with this metaphor, but I didn't, I'm actually going to turn to Dr. Lindsay Doe, a clinical sexologist, on how we look at porn and if it's a good or bad thing, depending.
There's actually quite a bit of research on the effects of porn, but none of it settles whether or not porn is helpful or harmful. I did find a sort of common ground in this odd review of literature. The effects are not a result of the porn, they're a result of the people. In the words of sociologist, sexologist Ira Reese, our reactions to sexually arousing films or books provide insight into our personal sexual attitudes. What we are really reacting to is not the objective material, but rather a projection of our own innermost feelings concerning the type of sexuality presented.
Yeah, so very, very like this definitively it is not this, it is this, and just like none of the research says that.
Yeah, no research seems to say anything about that.
I don't think they even measured anyone's attitudes in these studies.
No.
That would be an interesting thing to study. How do attitudes about sex affect the brain scans of people observing it? That would be something to look at, but that has not been done.
It's very interesting how at the beginning she kind of like muddies the water. It's like, well, it could be this thing, it could be that thing, but definitively it's this thing.
Yeah. It's sociology. You can't argue with it.
Yeah. It's all feelings, man.
All feelings.
Yeah. This is why all these papers these papers are neuroscience based rather than sexology based.
Yeah, I don't trust sexologists as far as I can throw them, honestly.
And with your bad knees, you shouldn't be throwing anybody.
Take, for example, this glass of water. I'm going to put yellow food coloring in it because this episode's about porn. The question is often, does porn cause aggressive sexual tendencies? Dr. Reese?
Please don't
drinking pee.
Please don't make water sports references, lady. Please.
Yeah, why? Why is it yellow because of porn?
Speaking of which, I actually had to pee back a little bit.
You know, porn. Porn loves pee.
Ooh, Tenny got really hot looking at that cup full of pee. Yes, he'll be right back.
If you take the porn away, do the attitudes still shape the brain shape?
Well, here, see, I've heard this argument before because the thing that I got from that little quote, and I've heard this from gay rights activists and trans activists before, is that the porn makes people more at ease with other orientations, and he might say that in this video. I don't know if he does it. Did he already?
He said that porn released tension, that it made you more accepting of other groups and
that's just an assumption. That's just an assumption. That's not anything that's backed by anything that anybody has said. I've never seen that in any of the literature. I've seen people like with the trans thing around, if you would or wouldn't date a trans person. I've seen people make that argument where, looking at, transgender pornography, makes them more attracted to a transgender person, but not necessarily makes them more attracted to a pornographic version of a transgender person.
I'd be really curious because I could see straight people getting into trans porn, but not actually in real life having any interest in dating a trans person because, again, pornography is sort of like this weird fetish.
It's a fantasy
zone where you can kind of indulge in things that you would never do in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And it might even have a dehumanizing effect. I don't know that there's evidence that somehow watching porn of someone makes you feel for that person. Is there an emotional connection that gets formed?
It depends on the plot, doesn't it?
That's right. Do you really like the pizza man? Did the pizza man get really good character development in this episode?
It's pepperoni. Don't like that. Fuck that guy.
Did you ever see the Pizza Boy sketch from Tim and Eric? Oh my god, that's so good. I gotta find that real quick while we're waiting for Tenny. It's probably not on YouTube.
He's back. They probably took it down because YouTube is lame now.
Yeah, most likely. We can keep going.
We can.
I did find it. I'll throw it in chat. You guys can watch it later.
Cool. Let's go. She's going to talk about water sports now. So let's hear her out. Is she going to drink it?
Seductively.
Drink it.
This is like asking if water causes things to float. If we just put a cork in there, then the answer will be yes. But what about a lollipop? A key or battery? Because, like tendencies of sexual aggression, it's not an effect of porn. It's an effect of personal sexual attitudes. You want to know the effects of porn? Depends on who is going in the water. So who? 50 to 99% of men consume sexually explicit material. 67% of them think it's acceptable behavior. 30 to 86% of women consume it. 49% of them think it's acceptable. 90% came in contact with it by age 16, 50% by age 11.
Oh my god.
50% by age 11.
What the fuck?
They're really proud of those numbers, you can tell.
Yeah.
They're like, them's rookie numbers. We gotta pump those up.
If everybody's doing it, it's fine.
Yes.
I mean, they're all jumping off the bridge, so why not?
We're not exacerbating anybody's problems.
We're not masturbating anybody's problems.
Yeah. There's no one in that 99% of men who are being negatively affected by the porn. They're all fine.
Again, porn and the studies around it are correlational in how we see it or view it, and even how we react to it. So do I think porn is inherently bad? Absolutely not. But in the absence of sex education, I can see why this conversation turns so dark.
The first few times I, had sex, I was not saying no to things that were not good. And it's because I thought that that's what I was supposed to be attracted to. And I'm so angry that porn is so loved.
I don't know. I'm always very suspicious of people.
Just watching him squirm here is just...
I know. Yeah, he really doesn't like what he's hearing.
He's like,
Oh,
oh,
it seems
God.
like he's putting on an act. Kind of seems.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, he
much
is
to me.
making a video for entertainment purposes, so he's gonna want to play it up a bit.
Yeah, it's true. I don't think he's doing it consciously though.
No.
And the anger from a lot of the people in the sex worker community at the takes and what's being said in this interview. But I need everyone to just kind of step back for a second and realize that this is a traumatized person, a victim of the complacency of our educational system in America, trying to voice that we have a problem here. And I know that it's angled at the porn and the pornographers and the people who create and produce and whatnot, but where are the parents? Where's the accountability there? Where are the
Well, she didn't mention in this interview, she didn't mention anything about what he's pointing to as the issue. Like, she didn't mention anything about like her parents could have been great and been like, yeah, this is, you know, sex is like this. She could have had, because she was homeschooled, like you said, right?
Right. She's not in the public school system. So yeah, his criticism of the public school system kind of falls flat on those grounds.
Yeah. But she doesn't mention any of that. He doesn't know that. He's just assuming that this is what this is.
Yeah.
Is that it's this problem, and he's not engaging with what she's saying. You know, he's kind of looking for a way to circumvent what she's saying to get to what he wants to talk about.
And, you know, to be fair to parents at this point, especially when she was 11 to 14 years old, which would have been, you know, maybe 10 years ago or so by now.
Mm-hmm.
It was a brand new landscape for parents. I don't think parents fully realized how accessible this stuff was, how easy it was for young people to get to it. So the fact that they didn't educate their kids about porn and like what it is, what to do if you encounter it, how to process it, how to think about it, whether even to watch it, I think that was probably just not even on their minds when she was 11, especially.
Yeah.
It's hard to blame parents in that context because 11 is just so young. You really don't think of your 11-year-old daughter watching BDSM porn.
No. I think that'll change, though. I think that'll definitely change because we're going to have a generation that grew up with it.
They'll have to talk to kids younger and be like, this is the kind of content you're going to find. You need to close that out right away.
I think we'll see a lot more restrictive usage of smartphones and computers for the next generation that comes up because of this current generation, what they're experiencing, having just free access to all this.
It's like Gabble's back.
Hey, Gabs. Maybe not.
Maybe not. Is Tennyson back?
Is it just you and me?
Is it time to make out? Oh.
Is it time for gay guy touch pussy for first time? My favorite video.
His favorite video. Are you in one of those videos and you just haven't told us? Now, is that porn? YouTube doesn't seem to think so. So
there is like naked yoga and stuff.
Yeah,
on YouTube.
YouTube has come out.
You gotta know where to look.
Well, and do we even want to talk about the the types of videos that were on YouTube where certain people who might have the same views as Sappho were putting time codes under videos about children playing at the pool and stuff.
Oh no!
You guys remember that?
Was that Adpocalypse stuff?
Yeah, that was Adpocalypse stuff.
Yeah.
But it was going on. I mean, it's not like it wasn't.
I mean, it was a real thing. I know. Come on, people. Keep it in your pants. That's all I gotta say.
Well, keep the pedos in the wood chipper.
Keep the pedos in the wood chipper. I agree.
People upset with the government and officials who put these legislations together that allow us to get so complacent about sex education. I'm just upset. Imagine if Billie had any sort of sex education that talked about porn.
Well, you don't know if she had or not. She didn't talk about it.
Just demystified it. Even
projecting
one single class that just broke that down whatsoever. This brings up
maybe she had the best in the world. You don't know.
That makes me so sad and makes me wish that we talked about kink specifically in a lot of our sex education programs.
Oh man, what do you think about that hot take?
Wait. Hold up.
Kink in sex education.
Okay.
Hell to the fuck no.
Let's no. I don't.
What?
No.
Hello, kids. We're going to talk about water sports today.
Yeah. Grab your cucumbers, grab your sounding rods. Let's show how this works.
Mom, take me home. I'm scared. Can you imagine it's not even like a teacher, just some like some random like hobo shows up? Hey kids, you like leather jackets?
Yeah, just with chalk on the chalkboard, just CBT. All right, who can tell me what this stands for?
Cock and ball torture from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia at en.wikipedia.org.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, no. We had a pretty good breakdown of what like good sex education should look like. It should be clinical. It shouldn't really be like encouraging, like just kind of providing knowledge. Like, look, this is how sex works. Let's move on. I don't think we should be educating kids about fucking kink.
Like, tell kids like what a normal amount of porn watching is.
Yeah,
like here's
a normal amount
where you're not like shrinking your brain matter. and use those words. I don't even care if we don't have proof that it's causational. Just use those words.
Yeah.
Put a little fear of God in them. If you watch 80 hours a week, your brain's gonna shrink.
You know, I remember when I was a kid, it went around with all the boys at school that if you were to, you know, spank the monkey too much, that it would actually shrink.
Mm.
And people were deathly afraid of that.
See, and there's utility in those silly stories.
There are,
yeah.
Keeps you in check a little bit.
It does. I still haven't ever touched my wiener once.
Oh, that's good.
You would think that would be the opposite reaction, though. Like, it's like all those ads on those websites that I won't mention, where it's like this simple trick, where it's like
one simple trick,
banned African penis ritual. That's a real. That's one that actually. It's usually linked to like a weird supplement that probably doesn't work.
Yep. Wow.
Probably. Probably doesn't work, as if you're like holding out hope that it will work.
Men are always on the lookout for those penis growth pills.
Yeah, it's a very important thing to a man. You're not looking out for vagina growth drugs. You don't want a gigantic vagina.
I'm personally not.
No.
Well,
it's like Kirby in the new Nintendo Direct one, where he like envelops a car. You don't want to do that.
Well,
Kirby vagina.
Look,
big Kirby vagina enveloping a car.
We could talk about my new fetish all day, but no.
The pussy.
You don't want a man to be able to wear you as a hat.
It's just all like wet and weird. Yeah. Just drooling.
Let's keep going.
Brilliant.
This is why I give up on women.
Because there's so much we can learn from kink besides consent, of course, and also that it's not explicit. It doesn't need to be overtly explicit or super problematic.
The only thing that I've learned from talking about kink is how little faith in humanity you actually need to be able to survive in this world. The answer is 0.
Yeah.
Or even extreme to be seen as normal, because there's so much to even that study of like, do we actually carve this groove into what we're interested in? Like, do we make it so we need more and more extreme things to get off? And in fact, SciShow, another wonderful YouTube channel, says it's so much better and has some really good contextual information on that as well.
Some research has found that watching a lot of pornography might reflect differences in people's brains, especially in a part called the striatum. The striatum is involved in reward processing and consistently gets activated during sexual arousal, among other regions. Sexual arousal.
Hey guys, crack cocaine. It doesn't really show that it's addictive. Just shows that some people will get addicted to it.
Oh, nice.
See?
The last person.
Let me illustrate by peeing in this cup and dropping a cork in it.
The last person I want to hear.
Wait, that's my other new kink.
Last person I want to hear talk about sexual arousal is Hank Green. I used to watch the Green Brothers videos on like history and literature in high school. I don't want to hear them talk to anybody about sex ed. Crash course, sexual education.
You don't want to get sandwiched by the Green Brothers.
No,
you don't want his green eggs and ham.
I gonna ask you politely to shut the fuck up.
Is a workout for a lot of your brain. 2 MRI studies tested about 70 male participants by showing them sexy pictures, and the men who felt their pornography use was addictive or problematic had more activity in the ventral striatum compared to those who didn't. Another study found that how much porn men watched was negatively correlated with the size of a part of the striatum called the right caudate, as well as the connectivity between the striatum and other parts of the brain. The researchers of that study say it's possible that people who watch a lot of pornography stimulate this reward system a lot and actually rewire their brain to need more stimulation. But they also note that these brain differences might not be caused by porn. In other words, people with a smaller striatum may need more stimulation to experience pleasure and seek out more pornography. With this kind of correlational research, you can't really tell which of the two it is.
All that to say, there's so much that happens in the human body. All of our bodies work a little bit differently, and you can't just correlate the two. It's not always the case. The problem here isn't.
You kind of can when you know the mechanism at work.
Yeah, I like how. Do you think the first time he watched that SciShow clip, like he was just sweating bullets until Hank Green gave him that like little out at the end? It's just like, it's all bullshit. You can't tell. You can't tell.
Yeah, it's like Hank Green is like all this evidence that shows, might actually require all the things we're saying about pornography might be true, but here's this tiny little sliver that says that maybe says otherwise. We're not sure.
Yeah, we're not 100% sure. I mean,
yeah, it's like if you are trying to argue for something, but you can't find any evidence. Then you have a single individual case that somehow disproves the general rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
The exception or the possibility of an exception doesn't prove a rule.
I mean,
I'm pretty sure like quantum physics actually disproved all of physics.
Oh,
so
okay, that's fair.
Well,
sounds right to me. Well, I know lots about physics.
Yeah, I read a study on quantum physics that said maybe that's not true, so I'm going to latch onto that.
Hey, I've listened to enough episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience, and I've read enough I fucking love science articles.
Here's a good question. This is what I would levy at this person. If it's the case that there are individuals with smaller striatums and they're watching tons and tons of porn, is it healthy for them to watch that much porn? Because if it's the case that they just naturally have smaller ones and they just need more stimulation, then it shouldn't be a problem. It's just their natural setup. So is there a problem there or not? Or would they say, actually, it's still problematic to watch that much porn? Like it might actually be damaging. I don't know how they would answer that. Did they believe in such a thing as too much porn?
I want to see how big everybody's striatum is. Go ahead and send me a picture of it in my DMs, please.
I'm gonna do none of that, and yeah,
it gets bigger when I pull on it.
Oh shit! I'm sorry. Sorry for what? Our daddy taught us not to be ashamed of our striata, especially since it's such good size and all. Yeah, see that? Daddy gave me good advice.
Oh. Sometimes, Tenny, you just tickle me in places where I didn't know I wanted to be tickled.
I'm gonna take that as a compliment. 'Cause I don't know how else to take it.
Probably for the best.
Porn. It's that we don't offer enough opportunities to have a conversation that demystifies the porn. I have said porn so many times at this point.
Demystifies the porn has the same energy.
It
has the same energy as decolonize your mind.
Yeah, I know.
It does.
What does demystify? You know what? I used the word demystifying the other day, like just in on a conference call. Mm-hmm. I was so ashamed of myself just because I've heard it so much, and I was like, it's just demystify this product for the client. And like,
synergy.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. I was like,
more synergy.
Fuck. Like it's
collaboration,
just my striatum's so small.
We need to monetize our corporate efficiency and encourage our assets to engage in more synergy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
demystify is such a nonsense word.
Point, this video is not going to be monetized, right? There's no way. Anyway, let's see what the bad guy has to say.
I like his hoodie.
I'm so angry that porn is so loved, and I'm so angry at myself for thinking that it was okay, and it just is. The way that like vaginas look in porn is fucking crazy.
There's so much.
Okay, I want to ask a question. So, is what she's saying? Does she have a right to feel that way? Do you think that what she's feeling is valid, in a sense? I'd say yes. I think she has every right to say that she feels like disgusted by that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What vaginas look like?
Well, about what porn vaginas
Well, I'm
look
sure
right.
that plenty of porn stars do surgery on their vaginas to do plastic sort of things to make it look more cosmetically appealing.
I mean, knowing what the male sex organ looks like in pornographic films, and about how unrealistic it is, I would assume that it's probably the same for women, that they have unrealistic shapes and are picked specifically because of the way that they're.
I know there are women
vaginal
they get dysphoria about their vagina shape.
Oh yeah.
Not a lot of
like
Audis.
It's the same for male actors. It's kind of like the same mechanism as selecting for the NBA. Wait, is that a French dip sandwich?
French dip right now.
Ooh, I'm gonna put French dip into Pornhub and see what comes up.
The sex act, you just know
it. Oh no!
Now, what is the sex act? Let's predict.
Well, a French dip. Well, first off, they're going to be under 18 if it's French. We all know that.
Ugh. What are they dipping? They're dipping their genitalia in something?
You just dip it in and out of a hole.
It's a lit cigarette.
It's a lit cigarette. I'm just saying, I wouldn't trust a Frenchman with in a Chuck E. Cheese. I'm just saying.
Who do you think
they like to sign petitions to get rid of the age of consent. It's sus.
Who do you think is behind the mascot? How do you think he got there in the first place?
That's why
he French? Oh no, he's a French rat. Ratatouille. No.
Oh, shit.
Stop.
All right.
Heartache, there's so much frustration, there's so much trauma and stigma, and like stigma is this insidious thing that others us so easily because we think that, you know, what those other people are into or doing is bad because I don't like it, or it's not my thing, or maybe I've been.
Yeah, well, sometimes it is.
Sometimes it's bad, though. Sometimes it is.
Sometimes you shouldn't whip your dick out in the middle of the mall at 7 p.m. on a Thursday.
Do you think she didn't feel othered by watching pornography of women doing a very unrealistic and violent sex acts?
Yeah, especially like being smacked or being hit or punched. Or
remember, this is the guy that told a very emotional story about his friend dying due to autoerotic asphyxiation, and he didn't blame the kink; he blamed society for stigmatizing the kink.
Yeah, he was friends with David Carradine.
I was gonna make the same joke.
Oh
no!
Lost but not forgotten.
Well, rest in power.
What you
rest
did.
in power.
Been shamed out of it, but there's it goes even deeper because then we just start to introspectively start to shame ourselves based on what other people are pushing on us.
The way that like vaginas look in porn is fucking crazy. No vaginas look like that.
Why? Like I get it. Like there's a lot of exaggeration. It's a fantasy, which Billy.
Okay, does he really have a right to be talking about what vaginas look like?
Yeah, I know.
Let's be real.
He is a porn actor. I'm sure he's seen vaginas up close.
He's seen porn actress vaginas.
He has seen porn actress vaginas, yeah.
Has he seen regular women's vaginas? Just normal ones without surgery? I somehow doubt it.
We know that you know is a thing because he wrote a song and included those lyrics. Vaginas, like penises, come in all shapes and sizes, and they work a little bit differently sometimes. Some people are really easy to get off. Some people require extra stimulation. But why can't a vagina?
Why would they require extra stimulation?
Oh, some people just do though.
Yeah. This is true. Physically.
Is that a bingo reference?
Bingo requires more to get off.
Yeah.
Fluffer boy.
Fluffer boy.
Vagina look that way? Why do we need to shame other people and the way they might look or how they might work just because we're uncomfortable or have been made uncomfortable by society?
We don't come like that.
Hold on. No, she's made uncomfortable by depictions of vaginas that are not natural.
Yeah.
That are simulated and exaggerated in such a way to be more quote unquote perfect to the majority male consumer, right? This is all about male fantasy. This is what men want to the 10th degree. It's not real. So yeah, she's going to feel like disassociated from that.
The whole video is just him completely ignoring what she's saying.
So when she talks about how about they don't come like that, I just thought of the Cyberpunk 2077 promo where Keanu Reeves is like, "Why do you come?"
Do not come. Do not come.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
I'm gonna come.
Oh. Please put that Trump clip in here.
Trump and Kamala together as a porn.
We must come together.
Has anyone done that?
I'm drawing it right now as we speak. Should I make Trump's dick the size of a bus or the size of a sedan?
Follow your heart.
Okay.
What is it? Why do you have a macro fetish?
What? It's just what? Because I watched too much porn when I was 8 years old.
Oh my god!
He watched,
It shrunk my brain's the size of a walnut.
Danimal's been watching Trump-based porn since he was very young.
Yeah.
He knows all the Trump porn
I saw Home Alone 2. I just couldn't take my eyes off that man.
Just because your body works one way does not discredit how someone else's body works. Let's say a girl that squirts thinks that she's broken because she sees that girls aren't supposed to squirt or vice versa. Like, your body is beautiful the way it works, but not everyone's body works the same.
It's how so many people think that they're supposed to learn. It's how so many men think that they're supposed to be. And because in porn there's no consent, there's such a huge problem of consent.
Well, I think the biggest problem in porn is that it makes it seem like the female orgasm is real.
Oh,
as opposed to the myth it is.
Yeah.
I would agree. As we all know, women just don't come. That's just the way God made them. Just the way God made them.
The
Inshallah, inshallah.
The graphics have gotten so good that it's really convincing.
VR graphics simulate the female orgasm.
That's the most dangerous thing about porn, I think.
That one hurt. Because there's no consent in porn, therefore there's a huge consent problem for everybody.
Yeah, you don't see the consent.
The whole crux of this conversation is this is a sex education problem, not a porn problem.
Do I need to go into the list of male porn actors who have been called out and or sued or arrested for sexual misconduct, forcing themselves onto people, incorporating physical violence that wasn't called for in the script, all that other stuff? I mean, you really need to go into that?
I mean, yeah, it's you don't see that on the screen when you're watching the porn is the strong affirmative consent, them signing the contracts. And even Cop brought it up earlier where it's well, the porn industry is still pretty predatory. Even if there is the signed contract and the consent, that doesn't always mean that that's a solid agreement.
Yeah. There are ways to control and manipulate people, especially people who are desperate for money.
Especially when sex is involved.
That's honestly a lot of people who end up in porn are fairly desperate, or they're trying to leverage their youth as best they can. They're looking for money, and there's good money in it.
I mean, look at the top OnlyFans earners, right?
Very opportunistic.
Mm-hmm.
Problem. This is a parenting problem, not a porn problem. This is a whole issue with the system of education in America problem, not a porn problem. Although porn problem, band name, all the Billy, if you want to do some vocals for porn problem.
I bet you if Billie Eilish heard this, she
and definitely
would
not a
fucking
sex
hate
worker
this
problem.
guy.
We're out here trying to advocate for sex education and making sure that kids aren't watching porn.
And not just consent in having sex, but consent during sex of, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not super hot when somebody's like, can I do this?
I love that moment though. It's so pure and like, yeah, it's not hot to be like, hey, is this hot? And then getting right back into character. Like, it's not hot, but it's cute and it's fun and it's funny, and that's what sex should be about, is just doing something different and trying new things and laughing.
I can't believe
It is true though. The best sex is always the sex where you're both laughing. I mean,
yeah,
it's always the most fun sex.
How
that
much? How much porn involves laughing?
yeah. There's not really.
Good question.
I would
How
watch.
much
You
porn
know,
involves like just people just having fun instead of being like really intense and.
I will say, a long time ago, back in college, just for funsies, we bought a home improvement porn. That was like the parody of the Home Improvement show.
Ew.
And there was a laugh track, and there was like those like home improvement interstitials where it's like the tools come by and like cut the screen or whatever, like between the porn scenes.
Wait, did they?
It was pretty amazing. So there was a laugh track in that porn.
Here's laugh track.
The children were involved, Gabbles, if that's what you're thinking.
Did it include the Tim Allen noise where he's like?
It did, yes. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did when he reached, climax. He did go. And yes, Wilson did put his penis through a hole in the fence.
Well
if
then,
everybody's wondering.
We've all learned something today.
Oh God.
Yeah,
I gotta send you that, Gabbles. You'd enjoy it.
No, fuck you.
To Billy's point, though, like porn doesn't involve those little moments of "Is this okay? Is this okay?" And that is important.
Yeah,
that's not modeled. The porn just involves thing happen, then the next thing, then the next thing, and there's no splice together. You're not really seeing a relationship.
Yeah,
you're
I don't
seeing
think a
two
lot.
actors simulate something.
Because there is porn back in like the 70s was like a movie. Like they had the illusion that they were filmmakers, that they were actually making a movie. It just happened to have dirty things in it. There was like a plot and things like that, but that's not what most porn is. Most porn is like fucking GIFs and like 30-second clips, like What
do you mean by?
Well, it's just, I don't know, just the noise that some people make sometimes. Yeah, right.
I was thinking of some guy. That would make it 10 times more enjoyable if you
just spice all porn with that.
That or the Seinfeld theme starts playing.
There is a Seinfeld porn. There is a Seinfeld porn.
Of course there is. Of course there is.
what you're saying, because I really agree 100%. And here's why.
Howard, how fucking dare you?
As a boy, I knew nothing about sex. There was such an innocence. You'd watch National Geographic to see a woman's breasts or something. You didn't, there was no...
Was that a common pastime for adolescent boys prior to the internet?
Well,
it's watched,
it was true. It was like you couldn't get...
boys are going to be boys.
You didn't get to see nudity everywhere. You kind of had to find it where you could find it.
Like you're watching like a documentary about some like uncontacted tribe, and you're just like, show me the titties, show me the titties, show me the titties, show me the titties.
Nice, it's on Blu-ray. Very cool.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I did, as a young man, boy, teenager, I did look at the underwear ads for men in the Sears catalog and enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah.
Like I said, before porn was readily available, you made do.
Yeah, you had to use your imagination.
Right?
What's that? Is that an app? See, more joke.
We have reached peak boomer in this. We've reached peak boomer with that joke.
You're welcome.
But father, how do I swipe Sears catalog?
where to go. Well, the first time I had sex, I had no clue what the fuck I was doing. There was a certain innocence about it. Yeah. And I've often said, if I had porn when I was a kid, I'd be running around spanking people thinking that this is what they would like. And I have 3 daughters, and I was like, what do they think is going on? And but I never, I don't know. We never talked about it, but.
So he has 3 daughters, and then all of a sudden he started thinking, I wonder what all this is doing to men and women. Yeah, I think that kind of explains the shift.
Yeah.
You have kids, and then you're like,
he's a
holy
way
crap.
different generation. Yeah.
What's going to happen to my kids? My kids are in these new waters that I'm unfamiliar with.
Yeah, this is why it's so important for parents to sit down with their kids when the time comes and say, okay, here's how you should act on the internet. So you got to remember when netiquette was a thing, like etiquette for the interwebs.
Mm-hmm.
Like people used to talk about, don't give out your personal information online. Don't give out where you live, your bank information.
Make sure to use racial slurs whenever possible. Important things like that.
Yeah, just to keep things lively.
What's the Seinfeld the Triple X? Why does George Costanza look like a fat pedophile?
I mean,
does he
Jason
not?
Alexander. He was in the pool.
Do they all bang her, or is it more like a mixer?
I don't know. We should watch it after this.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay.
You're such a big part of this problem, Howard. Parents, to have the fucking conversation. This is where I'm like, did Billie have was it a bunch of things like bad sex education plus the lack of parenting? Because clearly her parents shamed her when she started talking about it. But did they have the talks about the birds and the bees? And Howard, how fucking dare you? Again, you were in such this sexually powered environment and how you built your empire, and you're not having the conversation with your own daughters, multiple of which who could be having the same trauma. It's just this downward spiral. It keeps repeating itself. And
it's almost like this culture kind of sucks. Maybe Howard Stern is kind of realizing it now.
Yeah. But he's really dumping on him for doing that.
Yeah.
The fuck up and realize that the way we talk about sex is important, and the way we teach sex is even more important. This is just going to keep being an issue where everyone's fighting for honestly the same thing, which is better education to protect our kids. Ugh.
If you're not interested in getting thrown around during sex, if you're not interested in being slapped and being choked, people are like, you're vanilla, you're soft, you're boring in bed, you're not a freak, you're not. It's like, what the?
Right.
I have to want, and I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about women. Women are like, oh, I have to like being hurt to be thought of as good in bed.
No. And if someone's saying that, that's not someone you want to have a relationship with.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just wanted to say on the subject of I think it's really easy as a kid to be exposed to pornography or hardcore pornography when you're young, because every kid has access to the internet on their iPad or their iPod or their laptop or their parents' laptop when their parents are out of the room, whatever it is. And now Billie and I talk about this all the time. Now there's TikTok, right?
Dude.
And TikTok is so hyper sexualized. It's
nuts. I feel
all that stuff Billie was just saying about the choking and the slapping and whatever. It's all TikTok trends, literally.
Oh, it is genuinely been upsetting to me lately, because I've been doing so much, lots of therapy, and also kind of therapy within relationships and having good sex and healthy sex and having good relationships. And these things really brought out trauma that I had sexually. And why were we talking about, what were you just?
TikTok.
Oh, TikTok.
Honestly, at this point, my last brain cell will be just as distracted because y'all are going everywhere. It's like they're so close to breaking through the real problem here, which is the exposure of the sexualized content, but also the lack of the accountability in our culture.
Part of what's going on in the TikTok world, and I don't know how much we know about TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. I talk to people and I hear from people who use the platform.
And they all have DID.
It is extremely hyper. And it is hypersexual. What it is, though, in part, is it's this almost personified dopamine cycle because things just get extreme and more extreme and more extreme. And I think it is true. There's this sense that if you are not into some kind of kink, if you don't have some kind of fetish, you're maligned as boring and vanilla.
Yeah, it's like
and women are trying to compete, and they're trying to be like, I'm cool. I have fetish. I'm into that. And there's all this posturing that is probably not legitimate. It's not actually what they're into, but they're trying to pose and get attention from men or from others.
And these guys even do a 30-minute video. Like it's called something like do kinksters have better relationships or whatever.
Right.
And the whole video is like, well, if you don't have a kink, then you're just having vanilla sex. And, that's not, kinksters have a far more better relationship and they're so much better in all these different ways and blah, blah, blah. Even like these guys are the type of people that perpetuate that, oh, well, you have to have a kink if you want to be interested.
Mm-hmm. And we're seeing this and TikTok, because it's a very young audience, we're seeing this with like 12, 13-year-old girls talking about their fetishes online.
I remember there used to be a time when like vanilla was enough, when you could be interesting outside of, being intimate with somebody.
Well, you'd look at a Playboy magazine that was pretty much as in time periods of more restriction, you had less material to kind of define your identity around.
Yeah. And you know what?
So you had to
actually kind of fun.
And you actually had to go develop relationships and stuff instead of just staring at your computer screen. Talking about what your kinks are.
Is that not what we're doing right now?
I mean, my kink is definitely watching videos with friends. So.
Calling the kettle black. I mean, pot calling the kettle black.
Parents aren't teaching it. Schools aren't teaching it. And it all trickles down to the fact that we are monetizing and making money off of exploiting and exposing kids to things like TikTok or Instagram for children, which terrible idea. Or the fact that YouTube puts actual people who have been accused of being predators, high sisters, in front of and on the homepage daily. I had to block.
What the fuck was that? The accused of predators? They said hi sisters? What the fuck was that?
Don't know.
Is he suggesting that he's been accused of being a predator?
No, I think he's talking about, well, there's a lot of Minecraft YouTubers that get outed as pedos, so.
Oh, maybe.
I don't know. There's somebody not happy with.
Block that actual creator multiple times before YouTube literally stopped putting them in front of my homepage every freaking day. That is a problem. Imagine I'm someone who was actually...
So some creator he kept seeing videos of that he didn't like.
Okay.
For some allegations, I don't know.
And preyed upon by said creator who also is allowed to prance around in jockstraps and thongs in Coachella and have multiple ads in front of there and in the middle of their video. What? But for instance, if
Hassan? No, wait. He's not on YouTube. He's a Twitch thought.
A himbo.
Maybe he's looking at his own homepage.
Oh no!
I had to block myself to get myself off the fan.
Who is? I kept on seeing these two guys constantly talking about sex and kink. It was disgusting. Oh, that's us.
If someone like myself gets on TikTok and makes an educational video about, condoms and putting it on a banana, we are literally deleted. I'm not even making this up. This happened. We are restricted from the platform and they delete the TikTok because it's inappropriate. But then 10 seconds later, I'm on my For You page and there's some guy playing golf with his dick swinging around. You can see everything. It's just a problem.
Link the video.
Aren't those recommended to you from an algorithm?
Yeah, based on what your viewing habits.
Yeah,
sir.
Look, TikTok is a Chinese company, and I am convinced their goal is the downfall of American society. So they're just going to push every content that they think is going to lead to cultural dissolution.
What makes you think that China hates America? How could you even say that?
They allow all the LGBT stuff that they won't allow in their own country. Tells you something. Or does it? I don't know. Well, I did see a headline.
They want their people to reproduce like crazy. They do want that.
Now be banned for misgendering or dead naming on TikTok. Watch yourselves.
Really?
Yes. I don't know how they're going to determine misgendering. I guess if you don't call them bug self, maybe that's misgendering. I don't know. What if they're gender fluid and their pronouns change throughout the day?
Yeah.
I guess you just get anybody banned.
China is actually super LGBT friendly. They even have like camps where they can all greet and meet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That sounds super cool.
It's like Fire Island, but, you know, without food.
Well, we'll have to do a fundraiser to get you three over there so that you can enjoy that.
God, no.
Actually,
Please.
I think
enjoy my life.
semi-recently, within the last year, a Chinese court ruled that homosexuality could be classified as a mental illness.
Well, that's good news.
Oh.
Good news.
Yeah.
Not as a criminal act.
Yeah, making steps.
Actual education. Our videos on YouTube weekly are restricted or held back, or we just have to go through 10 other loops. Loops?
Like a
Oops,
sad
oops
piano
and loops,
music.
just to get our content out there. And we are not trying to be pervasive. We're not trying to expose anyone to anything that's inappropriate. We're having conversations that we don't get to have in classes or schools because
Trying to expose anybody to anything inappropriate. Let's peruse What's the Safeword's latest videos. I'm just curious. You might need to cut this all out, but let's see. Kinky green flags. Why we aren't monogamous. Are kinksters better at relationships? Budget binding. What could go wrong? The history of the vibrator. Trying acrylic pores. Oh god, are they pouring acrylic on themselves? Is that a kink?
Ooh.
Becoming himbos. Doms, DDLGs, daddies, and more.
Yeah, this isn't child friendly.
What is an ovipositor? And the thumbnail is something to behold.
Ovipositor.
I will clip that and I will throw that into the chat for you all to
I will
marvel
be
at.
looking at those thumbnails.
An ovipositor is in like the thing that an insect uses to lay its eggs.
I
Yeah.
believe so.
Yeah, it's the
Judging
thing that...
from the thumbnail. There you go.
Oh,
There you
wow.
go. They're sex educators on YouTube, guys. They're sex educators on YouTube. What's wrong with this? Why would they get demonetized?
That's actually worse than a tarantula wasp.
So is the fetish laying eggs? So
I
Yeah,
suppose so.
I guess.
So you put eggs up your butt and then poop them out, and that's probably a fetish.
Or
Just in time for Easter too. That was
Just in
10
time
months
for
ago,
Easter.
so that would have been
What a way to celebrate a deeply Christian holiday, but by
Yeah.
pooping out eggs.
I'm going to conversion camp and going to become a Catholic. I'm sorry.
Making Christmas cookies with sex toys.
Do they clean them first, at least?
I hope. I mean, if not, you're going to be picking some short and curlies out of your teeth.
Kill me.
Yeah, I can't imagine why they get demonetized. They're just trying to get out education there,
They're
guys.
just trying to talk to the kids about the sex.
Yeah. They're
That's-
trying to educate.
You know, I used to think that abstinence only was a bad idea, but over the course of the last 2 minutes,
You want to just chemically castrate everybody.
Yes,
right?
sterilization.
No more sex.
Sterilization
No
is
more.
it's the final solution.
No more sex. No, just no. Stop. No more. Okay, no more. Okay.
that's seen as perverse or too sexual when we're just covering educational resources from professionals who say what kids and teens need to know in some cases.
Because I've been so hyper.
Do kids need to know about ovipositors? Is this... I don't understand. It looks like a funny... They're trying to be funny and provocative. Like, this is not educational.
Aware of this lately. TikTok is so funny. I love TikTok. It brings me joy. It's funny, but I am really upset by the hypersexualization of
super young.
I'm like, guys.
This is a bad take, not because of the hypersexualization of it, but because she said TikTok brings her joy. In no universe where humans exist and have built civilizations can anyone truly say that TikTok brings you joy. Like that. I'm sorry, that is not.
Maybe if you found the right corner, right? In almost
I have
every
laughed at a
website,
TikTok.
there are corners on every website that might be good. I think I've laughed at a few TikToks here and there, but yeah, you really gotta dig for it. I'm assuming
Diamonds in the
she probably watches a lot of videos of people like lip syncing to her music, and that's probably very flattering, I'm sure.
and then it just like cuts to hardcore pornography.
Yeah, she's like, oh my god. Just throws the phone on the floor.
Not again.
That's like a trend.
I was just watching a 13-year-old sing my music, and then she started twerking. Moment ruined. It is sad.
This is literally porn. It's just like you're pretending. It's
you
fucking
made a
crazy.
really
There's
good point.
Kids everywhere, all over the app. That would traumatize me if I saw that when I was a kid. Traumatize me.
You're bringing up such a good thing, because I'm telling you, man, if I had had that shit when I was 14, I would have been way overly sexualized. And I would have assumed what women want was like way more violent, probably. You know, there was an innocence.
Yeah. How could you not?
And the fact that we're just like ignoring that Howard's built his entire career off of the backs of sex and promiscuity.
He just hates engaging with what they
really
said.
bad, crude, comedic sorts of bits just to have these conversations.
Like, bro, get over it.
Yeah,
Change
for
his
adults,
mind.
man. Yeah, he was doing it for an adult audience as well.
Yeah, it was not meant for young people.
Ugh.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I really do. And it is weird. But I will, full disclosure, I do watch a lot of porn. You know, I still beat off at my advanced age. Can you fucking believe it? I thought it would end by now. I just wanted to
search. What's your porn search history, Howard?
I just watched two women massaging each other. It was her first time getting a massage.
Anything with women is beautiful.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I can't watch a man in porn. No.
Meanwhile, how weird is it? The trend is step.
I kind of love the direction the conversation has taken. From like
that is pretty funny.
5 minutes ago, she's like, porn is a disgrace. Like, it's disgusting. It's it's disgraceful. And then, anything with a woman in it is beautiful. I can't watch a man. It's like, and then Howard Stern's over here going like, yeah, I still beat off from time to time.
Although he watched the most boomer porn ever.
Like,
two women massaging.
Like, oh, how intense. Like, sounds very...
I just love the way, like, because Howard Stern's from, I want to say he's either from New York or New Jersey, and the way he says beat off is the funniest shit.
Beat off.
Beat off. It's so good.
And it is quite apparent, like, Billy is traumatized by male depictions of sexuality, specifically, it seems. Yeah.
I can't imagine why.
Can't imagine why.
Stepsister and brother getting it on.
That also gives me nightmares. Like, literally.
But anyway, hey, listen, I don't want to run out of time with
Howard
that.
doesn't want to say that.
It's not incest porn if you push the mute button. That's just normal porn. And they just, mute.
It's not incest if it's your cousin by not blood.
Like that. What's that Pornhub meme where it's like most of our stepsister actors aren't even related. It's like most gets highlighted and like zoomed in.
No.
There's this episode of Always Sunny in Philadelphia where Frank tries to bang his dead wife's like widowed sister, and then Mac pushes him on to like his cousin Gail the snail, and it's like, and she's like giving Frank a handy under the table, and it's like,
she's the worst.
Mom, I'm sexually active now. Get over
snail.
it. Gail, you're 30 years old. You're supposed to be sexually active. You're supposed to be fondling your uncle under the table. Whoa, we're not blood related.
Gotta throw salt at her to get her to go away.
Yeah. Go, snail! Go, snail! And then she's just like, you're just mashing it now. You're just mashing it.
Okay, and it pretty much at that point is where they go into the musical act, so we're just gonna stop it there.
What a deep, the deep conversation where they kind of bounce a couple ideas. That's it.
Yeah.
And they
overall, what was that? Less than 5 minutes of conversation.
Look, if you got Jordan Peterson on about porn, he would probably talk about it for like 2 hours with some Jungian psychology and...
Oh my God, this guy would be curled up in the fetal position.
Yeah.
He wouldn't want to hear any of it.
There's this thing about lesbian pornography. And so that's the feminine represents chaos. And you have the world is consumed by chaos in a lesbian porno film. So, and when you pull your dick out and she pulls hers out, that's chaos. That's
I mean, think of the father, the daddy. I can't do a Jordan Peterson impression. Jesus Christ.
Listen what they say. He's good at it.
The father, the dad and
daddy. It's gotta be
the
a daddy.
in the hierarchy. Is he's the dominant one, and the cuckold. He wants to be put to the side. Because Tyrone represents the alpha male. It's like the alpha lobster, but with a giant black cock.
Oh my god.
That's good. All right, we're close to done. Let's
We are.
Yes.
get the last 5 minutes.
This conversation isn't a new one, unfortunately. We keep seeing these media stars talking about porn in such a negative way. I saw the other day Jada Smith, and Goop, what's her name? Goop, and Gwyneth Paltrow talking about, and this comes up in my mind because it's just media stars giving an opinion without actually talking about studies in most cases.
I mean, Gwyneth Paltrow is also the woman who thinks that women should steam their vaginas, and then also sells a candle that's scented like said vagina. So I wouldn't trust Gwyneth Paltrow with.
No, it wouldn't.
Oh, I was going to say this whole thing thread that he's going on where famous people aren't sex experts, but it's like, why can't they talk? Like, why can't any of us talk about sex? Like, we all have had sexual experiences. We all have sexual feelings. Like, why do we have to leave it to experts to be able to talk about these things? Like he had this whole video is about him being like, oh, you can't stigmatize this. You can't do this. You need to be free and open. But if you want to talk about it in a way that I don't like, you can't do that. You have to defer to the experts and you have to shut up about it.
Is he an expert? Does he have some kind of degree or something?
I mean,
or is this just based on his experience?
He's probably handled more dick than a urologist.
So, like experience. This is his life.
Well, apprenticeship.
Yeah, it seems like this is a conflict of two experiences. One being his life and another person talking about their life, and they're in conflict, understandably so. But he can't quite seem to wrap around that. And he thinks the studies somehow support his viewpoint more when actually it's only dubiously in support of his.
And only if you look at the very narrow field of studying porn and not like the overall effects of, say, like things like pleasure centers of the brain and how those can shift and mold over time and how those get affected by external stimuli and all that stuff. Like if you're just looking at the very narrow field of porn research, like.
Well, and also I liked the corollary claim. Like you can't say that someone's causally affected by porn in this way, in this harmful way. Well, that's really obvious because you can't actually show porn to a 10-year-old for 24 hours a day and see if they get damaged or not.
Oh, you might be able to in France.
That's actually true. National pastime.
And of all people, Gwyneth Paltrow and her freaking Goop show, that is a load of garbage. And the fact that she's just like using it to pretty much sell bad sex-related objects. But they had this weird take.
Porn has really messed us up in some ways. Like we're supposed to show up like every single thing is, I'm supposed to be there for every whim, every pleasure. It's like, whoa. And that the woman's pleasure doesn't matter. No. It's not even thought about.
And then the other layer, which I find really disturbing, is that because of the imagery that comes out and the consciousness that comes out around porn, I feel like young girls are getting the message that they have to be f***able. Like that's the number one priority, right? It's so...
Do you have a study to support that?
Do you have a single scientific study to support your claims, sir?
Yeah, excuse me. Do you have a study? What do the experts say about this?
Do you not trust the science?
I do find it funny, and this is just sort of a broader point, that a lot of this stuff was said fairly early by conservative Christian types.
You know, isn't it funny?
Yeah. And
everything comes full circle.
Now it's like, oh, there might be something to that. Maybe it's not a sin, but there's some
maybe
problems here.
Yeah, maybe it's not great to just be totally open about sex all the time, 24/7. I don't know.
Jerking it all day might not be a productive mode of life. I don't know.
Who knows? There's no studies that show that. I haven't seen any studies. What do the experts say?
But yeah, this idea like girls are learning that they just have to be fuckable all the time. Like that's obviously conservative Christians wouldn't have used that language, but they would have said like this is just teaching young girls that's the value they have to be sexual objects.
One of my favorite things that got pointed out was the Grammys, a couple of years ago when WAP won. And people were like being like, oh, women won all the major awards, women won everything. Now here's the centerpiece, wet ass pussy, about how how your vagina is so wet and men want it super bad and that's all you're good for. Good job, women.
Feminism.
Notice this with female pop stars from like the 80s onward. It's a lot of their appeal lies in sort of making themselves appealing to men in a way that perhaps isn't the best kind of image you want to put out if you're a female songwriter.
I'm going to say that's been going on for much longer than that, but but
it got really prominent in like basically the MTV world corporate.
Censorship laws changed, and that's probably a lot of what changed that landscape. Is suddenly you can do much more explicit stuff now.
You know, talking about the history of porn, I just thought of that. Actually, what porn really did actually contribute to, not like fucking stupid shit like the VHS tape, was First Amendment legislation.
Yeah,
protecting First Amendment speech. That's maybe the biggest contribution that porn has had.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of female, I guess, pop stars, rappers, singers it seems like there's an obsession with over-sexualizing or hyper-sexualizing themselves as a way to appeal and to become like famous. And I think that I also think that, like, to an extent, wholesome music, I put that in air quotes, but music that's sort of that's not explicitly focused on vices like sex, like reckless sexual activity or drugs or being reckless in general. A lot of that stuff gets sort of made fun of. Like we all sort of like laughed when we sort of laugh at like cheesy, I want to say like Christian rock music or other kinds of music for being sort of inoffensive genres. But I mean, in a world of pop music where so much emphasis is placed on things like WAP, like is it really that big of a problem if there's like some female artists who, you know, don't go down that route and still manage to gather a following? I mean, is that really problematic?
I think Billie Eilish is trying to do that. I mean, there's some sexuality to her, but I'm doing it in a different way. Interesting.
But Madonna really started that, didn't she?
Yeah, Madonna was a big influence on all that, for sure. But to me, it's kind of like the peacocking we see from the male side, right? In the same pop culture. The big, brassy style with a lot of big jewelry and big graphics and just everything's bombastic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the feminine side of that same culture is the hypersexual. It's just preening for attention on both sides. And I don't think either side is A, real, or B, helpful for young people who are trying to emulate it.
Awful, and it's like it's doing such a disservice.
Absolutely.
I feel like we're living in such a weird time because we're making all these incredible advancements and then we're going backwards and all these other...
Girl, you think that it's the porn that makes people think they have to be fuckable? Have you looked at Instagram? Have you looked at TikTok? Like, we're going back in this conversation, but also like, you sell vagina candles. I did buy this because I wanted to do like a weird like reaction video. You know what we're gonna react to right now? You know what? This is
okay. I like this. God,
this can't be what vaginas smell like. It's very flowery, bougie perfume. This can't. Reacting to my vagina candle live in 4K. Girl, you think porn's destroying the world? Your fucking vagina candle, I'm sure, is destroying the world in some way, shape, or fashion. It smells like my vagina. It smells good, but I don't think that's how a vagina smells. As a very gay person, I can't confirm and or deny, but not good. Not good. Oop.
That was kind of funny, but
that was funny. I like that.
But he clearly didn't have any response to what they said, so he just resorted to making fun of her vagina candle.
I mean, I think that something like the vagina candle should be made fun of.
Yes.
Because
it is very silly. Goop is a very silly program full of silly things. But
yep,
I want the Goop vagina candle.
Well, I'll buy it for you for your birthday.
Oh, thank you.
In closing, as this vagina cools off, when we let movie stars, even politicians, talk about sex work, and sex workers without having the sex workers as part of the conversation, we are doing not only a huge disservice, but we're ignoring fact, we're ignoring experiences, and we're literally just using fallacy and emotions to drive the conversation. And also, in some cases, capitalism, because obviously, if it doesn't smell like a vagina, then why are you going to buy it? Even comment below if you want it. It smells so bad. Why is it still burning? If your vagina is burning, please get it checked. This isn't an issue of sex work or even porn being a problem. This is a problem of not being able to have open conversations around sex and identity, and not teaching our kids and teens at an age-appropriate level about their bodies and about the sex and relationships that they might be having someday.
It also seems to be a problem of people talking out of line. No, sex workers there to monitor what you're saying and make sure you don't say anything wrong.
Yeah, you got to make sure you don't say anything problematic or toxic about sex workers. You swerf.
Swerf. I just learned what swerf was like earlier today.
Oh, did you?
I did. I was on Twitter, so I was talking about swerf. What was it even about? I don't remember. Someone was accusing someone of being a swerf. It was very stupid. And I'm like, oh, sex worker. Okay, yeah, got it. I hate this timeline.
I know, it's horrible.
You know what swerf sounds like when you say it in American? Like swerf? Sounds like some kind of like 90s extreme sports.
Yeah, we're swerfing.
It's
swerfing,
dude.
It might be a drug that the kids are doing. You're swerfing down on the docks.
It sounds like Smurf, and I can't get it out of my head. A bunch of like little blue people that hate pornography. Like a bunch of little blue people that just hate porn.
Hate porn.
We act like we're being inclusive when at the same time we're literally pushing marginalized communities to the curb. Instead of talking about how damaging porn is, why don't we ask questions about why is porn seen as damaging?
Okay, I want to make one point. He says, we're pushing away marginalized communities. Is not the individual who does not want to watch porn a marginalized individual based on the statistics he cited in this video?
Yeah.
Like, if 80% of people watch porn, like people who don't want to watch porn are a pretty significant minority.
You're a marginalized person, Kyle.
I'm marginalized. I have power now. Take that. No. I can pull my minority card any moment.
Well, if we all agree to identify as people who don't watch pornography, we all have power now.
But by the way, he's clearly referencing the acronym alphabet community.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Gabbles and Tenny, how do you guys feel that we need to keep porn to make sure that you guys are okay and kept protected?
I'm
very important to that.
I mean, where would we be without Tom of Finland?
Yeah.
Porn belongs at Pride.
There we go.
That's it. That's the end goal.
Make sure porn.
What Howard didn't do in this conversation was ask contextual questions, ask constructive questions, ask criticizing sorts of questions that could be like, hey, Billy, did you have proper sex education? Or did your parents have the birds and the bees talk? Or how can porn be used in such a way to teach us? Or maybe even like, how could we better equip kids and teens to have a better outlook?
Now he wants to ask her those questions when he's just been assuming it the whole video, by the way.
Look of their body, their image, relationships, or just loving yourself. Why is the conversation attacking porn? Because it's an easy target. Everyone's already on top of porn, pun intended, and pretty much railing them in non-consensual ways. Pun also intended in a very negative sort of way, though. Yeah, no, word choices. So while I've held you hostage, I hope that you listen before you go to the words that I'm saying here. Porn is not the issue. And at the end of the day, I hope that you can ask.
I'd just like to remind everyone that this is the guy who said, like, BDSM, what does that have to do with consent? He's talking about, like, kidnapping and shit. It's like, what are you doing?
I think he's using Billie Eilish song titles, right?
possibly. I
Yeah, but doesn't
don't
he
recognize that
I'm
one.
gonna go for that.
But yeah, it's keeping us hostage with a gun to our head.
Your own contextual questions or criticize how you might think about something and then have a conversation about it. Because whether you're kinky or not, it's always important to have a safe word. And today's safe word is sad guy, because that would end any scene I was in.
Duh.
And hey, if this kind of conversation was something that you vibed with, please leave a like. Please let me know what you thought. Please do not send any hate towards anyone included in this conversation, but add some comments down
Boy, we didn't follow that.
below of questions you might have or perspectives that you have in your own life. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
Bye.
The end.
Bye.
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 So yeah.
Make sure if you ever have anyone talk bad about porn that you make sure to say, wait a minute, do you have a study to support that?
Yeah.
Where's your study?
Remember,
where's your
we
study,
need to
you
have,
loser?
Yeah, where's your fucking study? But remember, we need to have, an open dialogue and conversation as long as the conversation is going in the way that I like it to go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That sounds about
How
right.
else do we have an open dialogue if the dialogue doesn't go in the way that I want it to?
It's just so frustrating when we have open dialogue and they don't, include me in the dialogue at all times.
Mm-hmm. They don't validate my position in every single point.
Oh, so frustrating.
Toxic is what it is.
Yeah, toxic, problematic.
Well, final thoughts, Gabbles?
Final thought. Yeah, Gabbles, you get to talk the entire time. Let's go.
I think there should be, like Elon Musk's brain chip thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that should be mandatory for every born child.
Uh-huh. Keep
and
going.
It would block out any pornography until that person has had sex. Like an ad block.
Ooh, okay. I actually kind of like this.
Like suddenly when they've had sex, they're like, oh shit, there's porn? What the fuck is this?
I don't think this is really unrealistic.
Yeah.
I don't think people should be allowed to date until they're married.
There you go.
We've solved
Arranged
this
marriages for everyone.
Yes.
Monarchy. Very famous.
We're all going to be monarchists.
Let's do a cast. Let's make the caste system again while we're at it.
Another podcast where we all end up as monarchists.
Another
flawless victory.
Well,
this
I guess
video is...
the videos seem very light on content and mostly just him feeling bad about it, which is funny because he had that moment where he's like, it's about facts, not feelings, and it's like, bro, this is just you emotionally cringing at a thing you don't like.
Yeah,
you don't actually have hard data to back up your assumptions here.
To be fair, it was really light on introspection too.
Yeah.
It was light on a lot of things, although I will appreciate once again how Howard Stern says the words beat off. I don't know why. It's just that the East Coast accent. They pronounce certain vowels in a way that's really funny to me. Anyway, the video was pretty devoid of any meaningful content. We can all agree pornography can be really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So,
I mean, like anything, you need to consume it in moderation.
Yeah, or you can choose not to consume it at all.
For 86 hours a week.
Whatever you do, the best thing to do is to approach it with some conscientiousness. I think it's when people approach the issue thoughtlessly, and I think that's the biggest issue is it's been treated very thoughtlessly for the last 20, 30 years. It's sort of been assumed that porn is just this thing, and it doesn't really have an effect, or it's just pictures, or it's just video. And it hasn't been treated seriously up until very recently, where people actually started asking hard questions about it.
Yeah. And then when people do try to approach it with thought and with kind of, with maybe a critical eye, then they start busting out the stuff of just like, well, you're really harming marginalized communities when you're talking about it in this way. And it's really problematic language. Mm-hmm. So they're shutting down the conversation around porn just as much as the conservatives were 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Although it turns out the conservatives were right. Oh, God. Oh, God.
Can't let anyone know.
It's a strange superposition, isn't it? Because sex is like super important and like you should have all of it at all times. But it's also super dangerous.
With any
and you
species.
shouldn't be
wait.
close to anyone showing their sex parts.
It's a very childish approach to a very mature subject.
Yeah, it's like it's all dangerous and all safe at all times.
And it's kind of like a child wanting to like gratify his immediate desire for like food or getting his way.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a fucking moron that says like 12-year-olds should vote or something.
Yeah, that is a
That one's
pretty
for you,
moronic.
Adam, if you made it to the end of this.
That is a pretty moronic
Like he
position.
watches this, please.
I mean, wait, people watch our show.
Where's the shorts? Where's the shorts?
Well, I think it's 10:32 where I am, which means that it's 2 minutes past my usual porn viewing time.
Yeah. I don't want to keep any of you away from your filthy, filthy porn.
Yeah.
So I guess it is a good time to say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye. Good
night. No, thank you.